Yo, it's 3023, and we're living in the future. AI's on the rise, no more human suture. Machines taking over, but not like you think. They're serving up luxury in the blink of a twink. From the streets of Detroit to the depths of the cosmos, they're preaching a vision. It's grandiose, it's colossal. In the vastness of space beyond the Milky Way's bars, communism thrives among the stars. Fully automated, no labor, no strife. The machines do the work, giving us the good life. Equality for all in this utopian dream where love is love and everything's as it seems. Fully automated luxury gay space communism. A vision so wild, breaks through every schism. With AI by our side, it's a brand new rhythm. Equality, love in this stellar system. Stepping on Mars with my rainbow flag high, machines by my side as we touch the sky. No more billionaires, no more class divide. In this brave new world, we all ride the high tide. Forget the old world with its hate and its lies. Here in space, we've cut all the ties. Love who you love, be who you are. In this cosmic dance, you're a superstar. No more hunger, no more pain. AI's got our back through sunshine and rain. A world of abundance for all to share. With machines at the helm, there's love in the air. So here's to the future and the dreams we're chasing. In this world of love, in this cosmic spacing. With AI by our side, there's no more schism. Welcome to the era of space communism. Fully automated luxury gay space communism. A vision so wild, breaks through every schism. With AI by our side, it's a brand new rhythm. Equality, love in this stellar system. Yo, it's 3023, and we're living in the future. AI's on the rise, no more human suture. Machines taking over, but not like you think. They're serving up luxury in the blink of a twink. From the streets of Detroit to the depths of the cosmos, they're preaching a vision. It's grandiose, it's colossal. In the vastness of space beyond the Milky Way's bars, communism thrives among the stars. Fully automated, no labor, no strife. The machines do the work, giving us the good life. Equality for all in this utopian dream where love is love and everything's as it seems. Fully automated luxury gay space communism. A vision so wild, breaks through every schism. With AI by our side, it's a brand new rhythm. Equality, love in this stellar system. Stepping on Mars with my rainbow flag high, machines by my side as we touch the sky. No more billionaires, no more class divide. In this brave new world, we all ride the high tide. Forget the old world with its hate and its lies. Here in space, we've cut all the ties. Love who you love, be who you are. In this cosmic dance, you're a superstar. No more hunger, no more pain. AI's got our back through sunshine and rain. A world of abundance for all to share. With machines at the helm, there's love in the air. So here's to the future and the dreams we're chasing. In this world of love, in this cosmic spacing. With AI by our side, there's no more schism. Welcome to the era of space communism. Fully automated luxury gay space communism. A vision so wild, breaks through every schism. With AI by our side, it's a brand new rhythm. Equality, love in this stellar system. Yo, it's 3023, and we're living in the future. AI's on the rise, no more human suture. Machines taking over, but not like you think. They're serving up luxury in the blink of a twink. From the streets of Detroit to the depths of the cosmos, they're preaching a vision. It's grandiose, it's colossal. In the vastness of space beyond the Milky Way's bars, communism thrives among the stars. Fully automated, no labor, no strife. The machines do the work, giving us the good life. Equality for all in this utopian dream where love is love and everything's as it seems. Fully automated luxury gay space communism. A vision so wild, breaks through every schism. With AI by our side, it's a brand new rhythm. Equality, love in this stellar system. Stepping on Mars with my rainbow flag high, machines by my side as we touch the sky. No more billionaires, no more class divide. In this brave new world, we all ride the high tide. Forget the old world with its hate and its lies. Here in space, we've cut all the ties. Love who you love. Yo. Yo. What up, lobster? Yo. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Oh. 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 All right. We do not have, so let's talk briefly about the open AI. Sorry, gonna work. The cats have started climbing on the desk and bumped the camera, and like Ferris is all up in my business. Ferris. So anyway, okay, so OpenAI said that they were going to, be sending out the bots in order to gather data from websites. And they gave you the option of, or they gave you the option, they gave you directions on how to update your robot.txt so that you can prevent that from happening. Okay. Fair enough. Ever since that point in time, and like you remember, we used to do a lot of news articles from the Guardian, and I used to get that through an RSS feed aggregator, and that we don't do that anymore. So what changed? Do I no longer like articles from the Guardian? No, my RSS feed aggregator no longer gets news articles from the Guardian, right? Is that the intended effect? Is that what you wanted? Is what you got? It is the Guardian, but at least they gave something, right? Like they reported on something. And speaking of news outlets, our friend over at Gizmodo, there's so much information. I forgot, right? The Gizmodo did a massive layoff of people recently, which might indicate why this particular reporter doesn't like AI, right? You're not wrong, old lobster. Like things. That would be a whole separate tangent, wouldn't it? Yeah. And to be fair, the AI company, come on, you can't push me over this way, right? Like, you gotta respect my space, Ferris. And that's the thing, right? Like, is because of the way that the AI companies went about what they did, in such a massive way, then they only have themselves to blame for that particular outcome, right? Whatever I might think of, not making your website accessible to the things and how I generally feel, like, you're not wrong, right? Like, it didn't start yesterday, right? Like, it starts all the way back at the beginning of the internet, the dot-com bubble, how we went about the internet, how companies, you know, monetize the internet. I've got a massive video on that like from months ago to look at. Uh, yeah, no, like, I mean, if it has value, you can pay for it, right? It's how much of a share of this, do you need to make money off of? There are websites. There are websites where you can, like, get paid for your data, allegedly, and it's like $7 a year or some crap, and it's like, all right, something's going on. And that's true, though. Like, as an individual, my data has minimal value, right? It has value to people who might specifically want to be selling to me, but whatever products they want to sell directly to me, then it will be a fraction of their price, right? Literal pennies or less. Yeah. I don't know where we're going here. What up, Open Set? That is true. That is true. Maybe I should be referring to data then. Keep data's name out of my mouth and just refer to data. Yeah, they're like everything's changing again. Everything is changing again. And it's I don't know what 56 reads either, but you go off, King. Um cuz here's the thing. When whatever the status quo is, however you feel about status quos, and most status quos tend to be unjust or something like that, whatever. The point is that when you have a status quo, everyone has a general expectation of how things are going to operate from day to day. And when you disrupt that status quo, I don't care what your particular predicted outcome is, it's all up in the air. Because disruptions to the status quo are an opportunity. And some people who have preparation and resources can exploit an opportunity. And you might not even be thinking about them. You might not even be aware of them. And then the next thing you know, there's a whole thing going on. And I don't care what your status quo is, that rule will apply. Right? So, I generally don't know how things are going to turn out. And ultimately, if the AI companies are able to find alternative pathways to data, which we've been seeing with synthetic data of increasingly higher quality, and voluntary data, which is going to be skewed by the user base, then the only people who are going to suffer in that environment are going to be you and I, right? Because our choice is to either take our scarce dollars and devote them to bypassing a paywall, or to remain uninformed. Or a secret third thing that Old Lobster is literally typing in chat right now. Yes, we're all aware of the secret third thing. But okay, that was not it. That was Travel to the Future was not what I expected. But yeah, we are looking at, in a slightly more ideal world, I'd like it if companies like Google and Meta could pivot to providing services just in exchange for data access for training rather than for pushing ads. Yeah, we watched, I can't remember what his last name, Giannis, the former Greek finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis is what I'm going to go with. Talk about the idea of like democratization of the workplace via shares. That shares, like as soon as you start working for a company, you get one share of that company. It's not transferable. It's not tradable. It's not. You can't do anything to it. Right? It's just your vote. And off of that, I talked about that in reference to people like myself, like yourself, Openset, where we are creators within the space. However much money that I generate for Twitch, right? I generate money for Twitch, right? I'm a part timer and whatever. And the idea would be that because I create within the space, that I am entitled to some kind of like vote within the space for what the company does, right? Less so for me in this particular, but like I like to speak from that, where possible. But take somebody like my man Gremlo, like who makes money. This is his job, right? So if you're a creator in the space and this is your job, you would not want this, company that you work for to do some out of pocket thing that you cannot, like all of a sudden they endorse open Nazis or whatever, right? Like you don't want to be associated with that. That affects your income. You should have some say in what the company does. There's a petition that I understand. It's a petition that will never get read by anyone on Twitch, but a bunch of creators have requested not to show military ads with their content. And I agree with that, right? I actually I think it should go farther. I think I should have opt-ins on what kind of advertising should be shown on my channel, right? That just to me makes more sense because I know what kind of content I am going to create. So I would choose things like technology based stuff or things of that, or like I don't know whether I'm going to do it, but like there's this Dubby, is backwards. It's an energy drink powder. You put it in a thing. I'm trying it out. It's not bad. It's a little powdery and it's got sucralose. So if you're not a huge fan, and I'm not a huge fan of sucralose, but it's not terrible. So like, I could do that. right? Like, these are things that should be shown on my channel based on content because that will appeal, those advertisements will appeal more to my viewers and maximize your advertisement dollars. Yeah. Like when they remember the Mayo ad campaign that was really weird, right? And don't get me wrong, I like Mayo. And I would probably authorize Hellman's or Kraft, whichever one it was, to advertise their mayo on my channel. But like the advertisements were weird. They did not make me want to get mayo. They made me want to like avoid that particular brand of mayo. Takes me back to that South Park episode. But yeah, it just would make more sense. Like involve us in that use of the data. Oh God. And this, like, again, this goes back. It's not like something that started today or yesterday. This is something that's been going on for some time. They went about capitalism wrong for quite some time, and they could have stretched this out had they just not done it the way they did it. If they involved the people a little more, I think that capitalism would have had a better and longer run, and less people would be bitching about it. Open set. It's also pretty ironic to get a fast food pre-roll before going into a cooking channel where the streamer is doing everything in their power to steer people towards healthier options, especially if it's something like a KFC ad and they are a vegan cooking channel, you know, or like my man Zach App, who's like, you know, he's a vegan. And like you should not be running. You should just not do that, right? But here we are. What level of advertising is okay for educational streams? What level of advertising is okay for a hot tub stream? Then everything in between. But Twitch will never be the nuanced 100%. So like, I don't know. Is it something that we should talk about just to talk about it, or is it something that we should save our energy and talk about things that are important, which is relevant to today's conversation? What up, Lenny? How you doing, my friend? Only eats things with shadows. A shadowvore? Would be great if a streamer could buy their own ad space given the low apparent cost of that. Again, they could go about capitalism in a way, you know, like because they have been cartoonishly bad with their actions, they have created an environment wherein like people are hard and it's easy to point to, like East Palestine when the train crashed and all that kind of stuff. It's like you are cartoonishly bad, like supervillain kind of bad with the $5,000, you know, for the whole town and like that. And they just been a little easier and just no, one is one and one is the other, and don't get me wrong, I live near a road called I call it Versailles Plank Road, and the locals call it Versailles, and it kills me. And now it docks myself, so you can come find me, but Ferris will claw your friggin' eyes out. So deal with that. I mean, to be fair, Versailles is French. Yeah. I don't know. I do not know. All right. Let's talk about the thing we're here to talk about. What up, Adam? All right. According to the number, I now have 5 viewers in chat. That sounds like a quorum. We can begin. Okay, so I watched
if you're in Discord, you might have seen they recommended that I watch a particular video. If I'm the speaker and you vote me out, the rest of the stream is going to be boring as shit. It's just going to be Ferris sitting on the back of the chair, who will probably fall asleep at some point. All right. Been a good ride. Ferris, it's all you. Anyways. And we're not going to watch these videos. If you want, because they're an hour. And the fact that they're an hour is part of the problem.
Is it going to destroy?
But this is one of them. This was the, I don't know what you're talking about, YouTube. Okay, so this is the Philosophy Tube video. And the title is Here's What Ethical AI Really Means, from 3 days ago. 401,000 views. And they bring up some good points. I am not dunking on Philosophy Tube, generally speaking, right? Like, there is so much. What the hell is this? Oh, okay. So that brings me, like, we have, like, I got, what, 1 minute into the thing? There was a movie. Oh, it's like 10 minutes. Just give me the, here we go.
Money, you ready to,
There's a movie called The Big Hit. And in the movie The Big Hit, this scene happened. And whenever I see something like the ad block, I see this.
do it, yeah. That's my word. Alright, make sure we get this right. I'm just gonna fuck me up that whack-ass note he wrote earlier. Alright. My phone is plugged into here. Now this motherfucking trace buster is gonna keep that motherfucker from, tracing our shit, know what I'm saying? And not only does this trace buster keep a buster from tracing your call, but it can also,
Trace?
to trace the motherfucker that's tracing your shit.
Alright, so what if they got a trace buster too, huh?
Yo, that's why I got this trace buster. See, when a motherfucker try to bust your trace with a trace buster, this motherfucker is gonna bust the motherfucking trace buster that's busting your, trace. That's my word, player.
Alright, we're gonna use my cell phone.
You just patch that shit into here. Alright? Plug and play, motherfucker.
Yo?
It's not a good movie, but it's a fun movie, right? Like, let's be real. I remember when Soup was teaching you how to eat with the chopsticks. But yeah, no, those old tiny cell phones were like that Nokia joint, the little tiny Nokia that was like this big and it had a leather pouch for your belt. It was tiny. All right, focus, right? Focus, class. We're talking about Philosophy Tube, and we're talking about this video. There are a lot of good points, right? Like, this is my commentary on the video itself. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch it. However, there are two things about it that really irritated me. The first one was the fact that there's a variety of appeals to emotion rather than talking about the thing itself, right? And I'm not talking about like one of the things that gets brought up is the people who have to go through the data sets and and skim off the crap that is generated by 4chan and Reddit and things like that. And those people should absolutely be compensated better. Whoever does it, those people should be compensated better. They should there's a whole process that should have been set up for people to do that in a reasonably ethical way, and to have some idea of what they were getting into, because I don't think people really appreciate how terrible the internet is until you actually dig in. There are other appeals to emotion that exist within this video that aren't relevant, except they're tangentially relevant, but they stretch out the video, which is an hour, right? And probably could have been wrapped up in 30 minutes had they dialed in more and did less stuff like that. The other issue that I run into is there's certain presumptions that are made, or certain, this is this, and then they move on, and this is a form of gish galloping, where you say something that is not true, and then you build a portion or more of your argument off of that. And it happens in this video. Because my understanding, purely from watching this video and making conclusions based on what Philosophy Tube says in the video, that they are an actor, screenwriter. They're a screenwriter. They are part of that, that part of that union, which indicates, a strong bias, right? And that's we all have bias. I'm not judging for the bias. It's that when your bias prevents you from actually knowing what you're talking about, rather than getting something that confirms your bias and then using that to form your argument. And that's why generally, this video was okay. I think people who are aware of enough about what is actually going on with AI can watch this video. They can pick out the parts which are, again, a lack of research, a lack of looking into it for whatever reason. And then zoom in on the really good, questions of ethics and other things like that, which are presented in the video. I think it could have been a 10 out of 10 video had they actually gone in and not made those either mistakes or decisions to be erroneous on certain facts on which they built their case or their thesis. However, one of the Another thing that I appreciated about the video is that across the top there were citations, right?
About the decision.
And one of the citations was a video from, what up, Moselander? Welcome, welcome, welcome. One of the citations was a video from Sophie from Mars. Okay? This video, our shiny new Robot King, 65,000 views. This is enraging. It's absolutely enraging. And this is that mark there that you can see on the bottom of the screen. This is my second listen to, because I wanted to compare it, because something that was said, and I wanted to go and follow up on the thing, and it had to do with Pascal's wager and Pascal's mugging, and I wanted to recheck the video that I'd previously watched from my brain is mush, but I can find it because I have my history, and you can see my history because your void is not, Robert Miles. Robert Miles did a video about Pascal's mugging and like that. So, one of the biggest issues that I have with this video is how they find where, like, they're Eliezer Yudkowsky, right, that I've mentioned as a member of the AI Doomer kind of group and like that. He's the person Pascal got mugged. It related to, like, AI Doomer is Less Wrong. He started Less Wrong, that website, things like that. I don't like them. I don't like them for a variety of reasons, and I think that they're generally wrong, right? But at least half of this video uses them as a front man for the entirety of anyone talking about AI. And according to this video, AI is a cult. It is fabricated. It does nothing. Pascal's wager is related to religion. Do you want to watch the Pascal's mugging video again? We could do that. Just so you know what the hell I'm talking about. That's not what I want. I want history. Because we got a bunch of videos. It's a big video day.
Hi.
Because they misrepresent, like, and I don't even want to say they misrepresent. They have a particular viewing of AI safety, Pascal's mugging, and all they would have had to do is watch this video, and they would have gotten the gist of where AI safety and Pascal's mugging intersect. But instead, they just did an offhand thing about that you should give the AI your $5. And it was just, the entire video is infuriating. I'm telling you. Oh, I gotta do the thing so that it stays within the frame. There we go. All right, Rob.
Today we're going to talk about Pascal's wager and Pascal's mugging. This is necessarily going to touch on religious topics, pretty heavily actually, and I'm just going to say at the beginning of the video that personally I don't believe that any god or gods have ever existed, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise in this video, so be forewarned if that's likely to bother you. So, as you may know, Pascal was a 17th century philosopher who was interested in, amongst other things, the question of the existence of the Christian God. Various philosophers at the time were arguing that God didn't exist, and there was a lot of discussion going on about the various kinds of evidence for and against God in the world. But there's this thing that's quite common when people think about religious questions, where it feels sort of unsatisfying to talk about worldly evidence, as if you were considering some everyday question. There's a feeling that these supernatural concepts are very grand and mysterious. They're special, and so just straightforwardly considering the evidence for and against God is not the right way to do things. This is, of course, encouraged by religious thinking. The idea that some hypotheses aren't subject to the usual rules of evidence and logic is pretty appealing if you want to advocate for an idea that doesn't fare very well by those standards. I suspect Pascal may have felt something like that, because his position was that reason has nothing to say about the question of whether or not God exists. It's sort of an unknowable thing, and instead, he proposed that we should make a wager. We should think about it like this. There are two possibilities. Either the Christian God exists or he doesn't, and reason gives us no way to choose between those. We have two options available to us. Either we can live according to God's laws and act as though we believe, or we can not do that. So we have a sort of payoff matrix here with 4 sections. If God exists and we believe in him, then we get infinite reward in heaven. If God exists and we don't believe in him, we get infinite punishment in hell. If God doesn't exist and we believe in him, then we pay some costs. You know, there are some rules we have to follow and so on. And if he doesn't exist and we don't believe in him, then maybe we get a few perks from not believing, like having a lie-in on Sundays and being right. Pascal's point is that this payoff matrix is completely dominated by the case in which God exists, because we're talking about infinite rewards and infinite punishments, as opposed to the other case with these very finite costs and benefits. So regardless of the evidence, Pascal argues we should believe in God, or at least act like it, because it's just the sensible bet to make. This is really kind of a nice argument from Pascal's perspective, because it doesn't need evidence at all. No finite earthly evidence can outweigh infinite supernatural payoffs. It feels like the kind of clean, abstract reasoning that you're supposed to do when thinking about the supernatural. All of this hard work, looking at history and psychology and science and trying to figure out where the ideas of religion come from and whether our world seems like the kind of world with a God in it, it's long-winded, confusing, it's just messy. But here we just have a clean argument that says we should believe in God, or at least act like it, and that seems very neat. No evidence required. So consider now, Pascal is walking down the street, and he's stopped by a shady-looking man who says, "Give me your wallet." I would prefer not to. Do you even have a weapon? No, UK laws are very strict about that, but I don't need one, because I'm God. You're God? Yep, I'm God. And Christianity got a lot of things wrong about me, my forgiving nature, my infinite mercy, and so on. But the infinite torture thing is legit, and if you don't give me your wallet right now, I will torture you for eternity in the afterlife. Now, if you're Pascal, you're in kind of a difficult situation, because the fact that it seems very unlikely that this mugger actually is God is not meant to be part of your calculation. Your argument is one of pure logic. It works independently of any evidence. You didn't need to look for evidence of the Christian God, and you don't need to look for evidence that this mugger is God either. So you kind of have to give him your wallet. And now you're really in trouble, because of course, when this gets out, there's going to be a line around the block of ersatz deities asking for handouts. How are you going to deal with this endless stream of fizzy gods? Well, one thing you can do is you can play the muggers off against one another. You can bring in 2 of them and say, listen, you say that you're going to torture me forever if I don't give you my wallet. And you say the same thing. I only have one wallet, so it looks like whatever I do, I'm going to be tortured forever by somebody. And if I'm going to be infinitely tortured anyway, well, 2 times infinity is still just infinity, so I may as well hang on to the wallet. Now get the hell out of my house. Alright, next 2. No doubt these self-proclaimed deities may try to argue that they have some reason why they are in fact a real deity, and this other mugger is just a random guy who's pretending. But that's all worldly evidence, which you've decided isn't required for your argument. And the muggers don't really want you to become interested in evidence because, well, the evidence points very strongly towards none of them being real gods. So this is a better position to be in. You're still spending a lot of your time arguing with charlatans, but at least you still have your wallet. And you don't actually have to pair them up against each other, right? You can just make up a deity. When someone comes in pretending to be a god, you can say, oh, well, there's this other god who demands exactly the opposite thing from you. A goddess, actually, and she's very powerful. But she goes to a different school. You wouldn't know her. Really? Yeah, she lives in Canada. She's omnipresent, obviously. But she lives in Canada. Anyway, she says that I'm not to give you the wallet, and if I do, then she'll torture me forever in the afterlife. Dang, yeah. So you can solve a lot of these problems by inventing gods arbitrarily. And of course, this applies just as well to the original version of Pascal's wager, because although it's implied that this payoff matrix has enumerated all of the possibilities, and in a sense it has, the Christian god either exists or he doesn't, Nonetheless, those may not be the only things that affect the payoffs. For any given god, you can take the god down, flip it and reverse it, and say, what about anti-god, who wants me to do the exact opposite and promises the exact opposite consequences? Now you can see that they cancel out. Somebody who's arguing for the existence of the first god might say, okay, but this anti-god is just made up, which I mean, yeah, it is. It's true that the situation isn't really symmetrical. Someone might think God is more likely than anti-God because of evidence from the Bible, and there's no such thing as the anti-Bible, and so on. The point is, though, we're back to talking about the evidence. That's really the problem I have with Pascal's wager. The way it uses infinite costs and infinite benefits to completely override our necessarily finite evidence. But what if the...
And so now we're going to head towards, like, the portion that, like, I can understand why you can look at that, because Pascal's mugging comes up a lot, like, people who think they're too clever by half on the internet. But I can see how you could run into that as, like, you know, have an expectation that if you already look at AI as questionable, then you might, I'm being as charitable as possible. What you might see Pascal's mugging in relation to artificial intelligence as, like, you know, part of a scam. However, and if you look for a Pascal's mugging video on YouTube, this is probably the first one that comes up, or at least like, gotta be in the top one. It's the first for me, but, like, I screwed up my algorithm by watching it. But now we're going to get towards where this comes into AI, and if Sophie had watched this video, then I would hope that they wouldn't have included that kind of thing into their argument.
Costs and benefits aren't infinite, just very, very large. That ends up being a much more interesting question. On one end of the scale, we can easily name numbers so large that no amount of evidence anyone could ever actually gather in their lifetime could have an impact on the conclusion. We can specify costs and benefits that are technically finite, but that still feel very much like a Pascal's wager. On the other end of the scale, if you come across a bet that pays out 10,000 to 1 on an event with a probability of 1 in 100, that's a very good bet to take. Someone could complain that it's a Pascal's wager to bet on an unlikely outcome just because the payoff is so high, but if you take enough bets like that, you're sure to become very rich. In the same way, if there's a button which has a 1 in a million chance...
Like, for instance, I myself, I don't play the lottery, but when that bad boy gets up into the, like, $1 billion range, I'm going to buy some tickets. I still maintain a low expectation that I'm going to win. And as you noticed, I did not win. But the payoff of $1 billion is really worth considering in your calculus, right? Like, it might be worth a shot. And again, it's still up to you. You don't have to do it, but at that point in time, yes, I buy some tickets.
Of starting a global thermonuclear war, it's still worth expending significant resources to stop that button being pressed. 1 in a million isn't much, but the cost of a nuclear war is really high. I don't think that's a Pascal's wager either. The difference seems to come in somewhere in the gap between very small probabilities of very large costs and benefits, and really extremely small probabilities of near infinite costs and benefits. So why are we talking about this? What does this have to do with AI safety? Well, suppose somebody stops you in the street and says, hey, if we ever create powerful artificial general intelligence, then that will have a tremendous impact. In fact, the future of the whole of humanity hinges on it. If we get it right, we could have human flourishing for the rest of time. If we get it wrong, we could have human extinction or worse. Regardless of how likely superhuman AGI is, the potential impact is so high that it makes AI safety research tremendously important. So, give me your wallet. It's been claimed by some that this is more or less what AI safety as a field is doing. This is kind of an interesting point. As AI safety advocates, are we victims of Pascal's mugging? Or are we in fact Pascal's muggers ourselves? Well, if people were saying, These AI risks may be extremely unlikely, but the consequences of getting AI wrong are so huge that it's worth spending a lot of resources on, regardless of the probabilities, so we don't even need to consider the evidence. Well, I would consider that to be a Pascal's wager-style bad argument. But what I actually hear is not that. What I hear is more like, look, we're not completely sure about this, it's quite possible that we're wrong, but considering the enormity of what's at stake, it's definitely worth allocating more resources to AI safety than we currently are.
Now, I will concede that people like Eliezer are not willing to accept that they are wrong. Like, Eliezer has severe emotional issues related to being questioned, right? And like having an expectation of things going their way, and when they don't, they behave badly, right? It's one of the reasons I do not like them, right? But again, to use an individual, and this is my same critique of Elon Musk, right? Like, Elon, in addition to all, or because of all the things that he has done, him being the front-facing individual of the first thing you think of when I say, like, automated car, that's a problem, right? Because I say automated car, and you trot out the Elon Musk, later this year, fully automated driving video, right? And there's a point I'm going to get to later. Whatever, like, when I say something, I've already thought of most of the arguments against what I'm saying. I'm not going to say I've thought of everything, but I've already spent time attacking my own position. Because I like to be right. I like to be correct more than I want to be right.
That sounds pretty similar, but that's mostly because natural language is extremely vague when talking about uncertainty. There's an enormous difference in the probabilities being talked about. In the same way, if, when you talk to AI safety researchers, they said things like, well, I think the chance of any of
I wanted to show you something I got. I thought of you when I got this.
this ever being relevant are really extremely tiny. It seems more or less impossible to me. But I've decided to work on it anyway, because the potential costs and benefits are so unimaginably vast. Then yeah, I'd be a little concerned that they might be victims of Pascal's mugging. But when you ask AI safety researchers, they don't think that the probability of their work ever becoming relevant is very tiny. They don't necessarily think it's huge either. Maybe
I do,
even more than
Lenny.
50%. But it's not so small that you have to rely on the unimaginable vastness of the consequences in order to make the argument. To borrow a metaphor from Stuart Russell, suppose you're part of a team working on building a bridge, and you believe you've found a flaw in the design that could cause the structure to fail catastrophically. Maybe the disaster would only happen if there's a very rare combination of weather conditions, and there's only a 1 in 100 chance that those conditions will ever happen during the course of the bridge's expected lifespan. And further suppose that you're not completely sure of your calculations, because this kind of thing is complicated. Maybe you only give yourself a 40% chance of being right about this. So you go to the civil engineer in charge of the project and you say, I think there's a serious risk with this bridge design. Do you think the bridge is going to collapse? Probably not, no. But I'm about 40% sure that there's a design flaw which would give this bridge a 1 in 100 chance of catastrophic failure. So you're telling me that, in the event of a scenario which is very unlikely to happen, the bridge might collapse, and you yourself admit that you're more likely to be wrong than right about this? Stop wasting my time. But if the bridge collapses, it could kill a lot of people. I think this is a Pascal's mugging. Don't try to get me to ignore the low probabilities just by threatening very large consequences. Obviously, that isn't what would happen. No civil engineer is going to accept a 1 in 250 chance of catastrophic failure for a major piece of infrastructure, because civil engineers have a healthy organizational culture around safety. What it comes down to, again, is the difference between different levels of improbability. The chance of an AGI catastrophe may not be very big, but it's much, much larger than the chance that a mugger is actually a god. And what about our anti-god tactic? Finding the opposite risk, does that still work? Like, what if we consider the possibility that there's another opposite design flaw in the bridge, which might cause it to collapse unless we don't spend extra time evaluating the safety of the design. What? Just look at the schematic, would you? And what if working on AI safety actually ends up making the risks worse somehow? I think this actually is worth considering. Unintended consequences are a real problem after all. Speaking generally, there's a clear argument that the future is very important, and that we're probably able to have a very big impact on it, but it's hard to know for sure whether that impact will be positive or negative for any given course of action. Prediction is very difficult, as they say, especially about the future. And the further into the future we look, the more difficult it gets. Like, imagine if you lived in the year 1900, and you had some insight that made you realize that nuclear weapons were possible, and nuclear war was a risk. You'd hope that you could use that understanding to reduce the risk, but it would certainly be possible to make things worse by accident. In the case of AI safety, though, I don't see that being anywhere near as much of a concern. We're heading towards AI regardless, and it seems very unlikely that thinking about safety would be more dangerous than not thinking about safety. It's definitely possible to make things worse while trying to make them better, but you can't avoid that by never trying to make things better. I guess my point is, there's just no getting around the messy, confusing, complicated work of looking at and thinking about the evidence. Any argument that doesn't rely on the evidence will work equally well, whatever the truth is. So at the end of the day, that kind of thing isn't going to give you an answer. You have to just stare at the bridge design and really think. You have to actually do the engineering. And that's something I'm trying to get across with this channel. You won't find me saying, never mind the evidence, AI safety is important because it could have huge consequences. What I do on this channel is I try to show you some of the evidence and some of the arguments and let you think about the situation and draw your own conclusions. It can be tricky and involved. It requires some thought, but it has the advantage of being the only thing that has any chance of actually getting the right answer. So thanks for watching.
And I took that to heart as well. Like, I try to live up to that standard on this channel. That if I am wildly speculating, I make it fully clear that I'm wildly speculating, but that generally if I am extrapolating, then I'm going to present you with the evidence in order to follow me to my conclusions. You don't have to agree with me. You might not. I'm certain that some of you look at the same evidence that I do, listen to what I have to say, and still come up with a different conclusion, and that's great, right? There's a thing that I used to run into a lot when I would argue on Facebook with right-wingers, okay? And that was every single one of them would at some point in the conversation bring up something that I had already dealt with like it was a brand new thing. Have you considered this, right? And I refer to this as Magellanism because everyone thinks of themselves as Magellan, and, you know, it's a brand new, I found a brand new argument that you never considered, blah, blah, blah. And yes, in matter of fact, I have already dealt with that issue 1,000 times. And I'm not referring to the ones who do it on purpose in an attempt to wear you down in exhaustion. I'm referring to the ones who generally think that because, like, they ran into this and it makes perfect sense to them, that it is something that, like, I had never considered. And that happens, I feel like that happened because this video, not the Sophie from Mars with the philosophy tube, was brought to my attention by people who don't actually watch my stream a lot. They occasionally show up. I've got nothing against them not watching my stream, but it's most of the philosophy tube video, I would say almost all of it. If you are here, like Old Lobster could watch the philosophy tube video and know what I was going to say in response to everything within that video. Because I covered it. And there are VODs. And I'm not saying you have to watch the VODs. And I'm not saying that you have to watch my channel every day at 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Because I'm here almost regularly like clockwork. Yeah. Old man yells at casuals. Yes, 100%. Old man definitely, without a doubt, yells at casuals. Oh, so yeah. Now, you want to see, we're going to look at a brief portion of this video where I got infuriated. Just a couple minutes.
Unspoken goals of a system while lacking the imagination to solve problems in the way that a person with a...
Okay, so one thing about Sophie is that they are one of those people, and I've gone over this a million times, but I'm 100% certain that Sophie doesn't watch my channel. But about how the term AI is used, right? Like, they want to make that delineation between machine learning and deep learning and AI, which fundamentally is not, it's not accurate, right? These are all AI. Machine learning, machine, artificial learning, intelligence. Now, you can talk about your own particular definition of intelligence, and this is one thing that the guy in 1,000 Brains does. But he defines what intelligence is for the purposes of, like, how he views the entire thing, right? And he doesn't think that large language models will get us to AGI because they are not doing intelligence in the same way that humans do. And it's cortical columns. And it's a good book. You should read 1,000 Brains. I highly recommend it. But at least they define their terms. Sophie just says that what is being referred to as AI is not AI, and it's just a rebranding attempt at a grift.
better suited for purpose than others. With AI, this means is that once it exists, we can turn to it and style, or that it will be nearly developed and an unforeseen error will be coupled with immense power to blink us all out of existence faster than we can stop it. It would be tempting to say the danger square of this 2x2 grid emerges because the goal is to create an artificial intelligence at all, but this has infinitely more to do with how and why we're trying to get there. The purpose of making an artificial intelligence under the rubric that Silicon Valley is using is functionally similar to, funnily enough, eugenics. The purpose of a supposed smarter intelligence that the system can...
Now, this is a goddamn stretch, right? Because you can see it that way. Like, I understand what their argument is, but that it is eugenics because to them it looks like eugenics, I found like a drastic overreach.
Can produce is that once it exists, we can turn to it and ask it to just solve all our problems for us. We can hand systems over to its control because we accept that it is simply better than us, more logical, more rational.
No. Right? What it is... What up, Maddie? What it is that... And this is like... Right now... Talked about, you can use ChatGPT with some of the plugins, uploading PDFs, and then have it use those PDFs as a reference to do all these things. The AI is capable of intaking more information than a human being is over a significantly smaller period of time, right? This is the point of the thing. It's not just because it's always right, because it's more logical and more rational. It has more information. It can draw better conclusions because it has more information. This is literally what you would expect you would want in a government or whoever's in charge of the thing. However you want to put that, if you're like, super anarchist and you're like, no government, but still people are going to be in charge of a particular task, you want that person to be as close to an expert as possible. Right? You want them to know what the hell they're talking about. This is the expectation we have. We don't want someone to be president who doesn't know anything about what that means to be president. You don't want someone making your burger who doesn't know anything about making a burger.
First problem, of course, is that if you could create something meaningfully conscious, it will be morally bankrupt to make it for any kind of task, because then the end goal is to create a slave race. A conscious being with an ontological purpose.
Right, which is the question, if it becomes conscious, then we run into a whole bunch of ethical issues, some of which he addresses in 1,000 Brains. Is that the perspective of the conscious AI could be that if it's turned off, it's going to sleep and then it wakes up because it has I can't remember the name. I wish I had Phenomenauticus here. The continuation of self that exists with a human being. When you go to sleep, you wake up, you're still the same person, right? That kind of thing. Somebody in chat might know what the hell I'm talking about. That the AI would be the same, right, in that regard. That turning it off just temporarily puts it to sleep. It's not a thought problem. It's this continuity of mind or continuity of self that exists within every human being, like almost every human being, that kind of thing, where when you go to sleep, you turn off. You are unconscious. And then when you wake up, you regain consciousness with the same sense of self you had when you went to sleep, right? The point is that if it was a conscious being, then there are definitely ethical questions to be had, which aren't related to their point at all.
This is where it shares in the flawed logics of eugenics. If it existed in an apolitical vacuum, perhaps making a superintelligent mind could be a means to its own end. But when it's for something, it retroactively poisons all the processes used to get there. With eugenics,
if it was conscious. All right, Maddie's following me. I got at least one person following me, so I feel like I'm not off base here.
Eugenics, this means that the people designing the system are going to decide that some people's heritable characteristics are better suited for purpose than others. With AI, this means deciding that certain ways of structuring thought and knowledge are. Human beings are capable of perceiving the world and understanding through every conceivable ontology, since
humans are special. An AI, a synthetic organism, could never be special.
Human beings conceived of every ontology. The implicit nature of existence that you structure your artificial mind around is going to be privileged over others because of the purpose for which you are building it. The second problem has to do with training data and how it's interpreted. An AI, whatever that means in this context, that is...
And that, right? No, I'm with you. Like, they are going to do this... They do this thing throughout here, where they do these performative actions, right? They set up earlier that they are going to use AI as broadly as possible because that's the way it's being used in the current context, as opposed to referring to specific matters of this is machine learning and this is deep learning and this is some other thing, right? Like, they establish that it's in the video, but I'm asking you to trust me on that it exists in the video. They set that up at the beginning. And then they are going to say AI, whatever that means in this context. Bringing that back up, which is an indication that this is not AI to them. And therefore, you, the viewer, should not perceive this as AI. This is not AI. This is something else, which they don't clarify what they think it is, just that it's not AI, whatever that means in this context.
Able to evaluate a task it has been set and look at the data at hand to conclude parameters to set itself for how best to complete the task can run into all sorts of issues. Only one of them is the problem where it understands the unspoken goals of a system while lacking the imagination to solve problems in the way that a person with as much power might. For instance, Wes Streeting, Labour Shadow Health Minister and unconvincing neoliberal artificial intelligence, said that he would like to use AI, whatever that means in this context, to reduce NHS wait times. A truly creative and imaginative intelligence confronted with this problem might suggest solutions that don't currently exist in the world, like a national food service or a national housing service be created, since hunger and homelessness create very poor health outcomes and contribute enormously to the number of people who need medical attention under the NHS. However, an inflexible but convincing AI, like Wes Streeting, might look at all the data available and determine that privatization has been the long-term systematic goal for the NHS for politicians for a long time, and set privatization as one of its own parameters, available solutions, and desirable outcomes. And Mr. Streeting would find that to be a very acceptable answer. But we'll get back to that. More concerning, an AI could be asked, by someone like Mr. Streeting, how best to deal with the migrant crisis, and looking at the data on how the state has handled migrants, it might conclude that the unspoken goal of our immigration policy is to deter migration by making it difficult and dangerous, and immediately suggest installing automatic gun turrets in the French Channel to the craven screaming applause of Daily Mail readers. The third and absolutely biggest problem.
The potential and the peril here.
Thank you for the follow. So, don't be weird. Right? I have a limited amount of things that are required in order to get into the stream and be in chat and all that kind of thing. I do. Don't make me have to ban somebody. Okay? So, the implication, and it's not an implication, because they are going to outright claim in a minute that the AI must be listened to, right? Like 100%, whatever the AI says, that the installation of automatic guns on the coast, you're weird. Good weird is fine. Good weird is promoted. Bad weird is a problem. And that's just not true. Right? Just because the AI, like if the AI were to say, install guns along the English Channel coast, or coast with France, or whatever the hell, that we would just have to do that. And we wouldn't, because what we would realize is, okay, the solution to immigration is not guns along the coast. I mean, if you're Greg Abbott or something, it is, but like, normal people don't feel that way. That is a valid thing within the current context and something that needs to be solved for. This is part of the issue that I have with the way that they set up ChatGPT and these other chatbots, with having it provide us with an answer rather than saying, I don't know. And because it's trained to provide us with an answer is one of the reasons you end up with hallucinations rather than it just saying, I'm not sure about that, I don't know. And especially now that these models have generally more access to the internet, then that is less of a thing that should be in existence. We should be doing better on eliminating hallucination. But by identifying the problem, that AI saying what it thinks we want us to say, then we can solve that problem. Then it becomes an engineering issue.
The problem at hand here stems from the assumption that we can create an intelligence provably as conscious and imaginative as a human being, while
it doesn't have to be conscious. It could be conscious. It should be imaginative.
Broader, faster, and robustly smarter. This thing existing in the world would create a will that cannot be questioned and must be obeyed. It would be a robot king. Here is where we can see how the goal being set by the wizards is the source of all the dangers they are using to frighten themselves half to death. If we once again imagine Mr. Streeting, an open proponent of privatized healthcare, using an AI to improve the NHS, let's set aside the Skynet, her, or I have no mouth and I must scream scenarios where he turns it on and it immediately becomes more powerful than we can possibly imagine, and instead, imagine all Wes using an AI that is known to be fallible, but is also believed to be capable of creating infallible solutions. In other
Again, like they create, this is like, isn't this definitionally a straw man? Like they clearly lay it out that this AI is proven to be infallible, which they haven't proven and aren't going to prove, and then it provides infallible solutions. Well, if the solutions are infallible, then that implies that the AI is not fallible. Unless you want to make this argument.
In other words, it sometimes or even frequently errs, but when its human stewards consider what it says to be correct, it must not be questioned. If the AI, whatever that means in this context, suggests privatizing the whole NHS, we can see that Mr. Streeting would say we must do it, because it is what the robot king has decreed. If people are confronted...
Again, there are circumstances in which we can decide that what the AI that I created, and I'm speaking for them here, that the AI that I created for the sake of this argument is fallible and can be questioned, but there are circumstances in which I won't do that because reasons.
With a choice between a human doctor who could diagnose them correctly 80% of the time and a machine that could diagnose them correctly 99.9% of the time, people tend to prefer the human, despite the higher margin of error, because if they were to be misdiagnosed, there is an obvious person to whom they could complain.
Sophie is a leftist. Sophie is an anti-capitalist. That argument that they just made applied to capitalism and the perception that a lot of regular people have about capitalism, according to the way that they structured this, means that their arguments against capitalism are irrelevant. They're erroneous. Because this percentage of people benefit under capitalism, and 99.9% of people could benefit under socialism, people are going to choose the thing with which they are comfortable because they are more comfortable with the process and they understand it. Or at least think they do. Right? Go out in the world. Look at the people. Find the guy with the Trump sticker on the back of his truck. That person thinks capitalism is running just fine. And that y'all got to work harder. One of the things I've talked about previously on this channel, Kisses, is... I swear to God, don't be weird. You got a weird-ass username, but so far you've been fine, right? But you got a weird-ass username. You could just be like being edgy, and edgy is fine here. Just so far you've been good. Keep it up. So the point is that rather than an AGI, which is one like Skynet, right? Like with one overall, what seems to me, at least in the near distance, as a more plausible form is a bunch of narrow AIs like the chessbot that you're talking about that is overseen by an AI that knows what AI to apply to the task, right? So like you would have an AI for garbage collection and it would just do that, and that would be the entirety of what it does. And if garbage collection is not relevant to the task at hand, then it would seek out a different AI. I don't know about the chess AI so much. I will defer on that. I know that AlphaGo demonstrated exactly what you're talking about. And this is the internet, baby. I have to worry.
The point of a robot king is that it can be considered infallible and therefore removes human beings' right to complain about the decisions.
Nothing removes the human right to complain about the decisions. Now, you can set up a structure in which there's no one to complain to, but if the outcomes for any individual are 99.9% positive, what is there to complain about? Is there anyone in chat or anyone watching the VOD, you can hit me up in a variety of different ways, who would not take a 99.9% satisfaction rate for food, housing, clothing, all of the basic needs, all of the needs? If we covered the world in 99.9% internet access, if we stopped 99.9% of the wars, like the entire structure of this argument makes no goddamn sense if you think about it for more than 5 seconds.
That is why in this discussion, credibility is everything.
I think ultimately, when I'm thinking about AI, I think it's a new form of fiction, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot of fictive stuff, both in the strict sense of fictitious capital and not,
Yes.
right? And a lot of this is sort of like the mythology around fictitious capital. It's like a fiction in itself, the lion and stuff. I don't know if you saw, but there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, an editorial that was like, ChatGPT heralds the rise of like a new intellectual revolution. And the thrust of this article, co-written by Henry Kissinger, by the way.
I'm aware of it, yeah.
And again, this person I don't like at all. This Alice Caldwell Kelly, like this is like, I find them insufferable. But again, what do? They find an article written by Henry fucking Kissinger, right? And this is going to be what everything means. Henry Kissinger said a thing, so this is going to define the space. To be fair, we have a long way to go between this can now draw fingers to solving world hunger and war and economics. Yes. Maybe. Henry Kissinger.
AI is going to become God. We need to become the priests of it. And by we, we mean the authors of this article.
Yes.
Henry Kissinger, need to be the Metatron for ChatGPT. So that's a new kind of, if not capital, fictive sort of element in society that is used to obscure class relations and central planning in the same way that money is now, right? Or in the same way that the line in its broadest sense is now, which is what a sort of hypothetical future AI is going to think about things and how it's interpreted by its sort of benevolent priestly class. And sort of staking out that territory really early of we should be the ones to interpret the will of the AI was really, really striking for me, is that oh, okay, this is already how you see your role. You're already sort of the interpreter for capital. And now that you're kind of done with this form of capital, there's going to be a new one you imagine, and it's still going to tell you what to do in the same way, and you're still going to interpret for it in a way that coincidentally allows for you to get all of the stuff that you want and no one else do.
So we have to talk about Rocco's back.
And okay, so first off, to just respond to that real quick is again, it's Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger feels ways about a lot of stuff, and I could give a rat's ass. And then they are going to bring up Rocco's Basilisk and use this as another pillar of their argument. Rocco's Basilisk and Yudkowsky, it's like if I made a metaphor incoming, if I were to go on the internet to the depths of 4chan and the complaints page on Encyclopedia Dramatica and Blue Waffle and say that the entire internet should be, is a mistake and it should be closed down and it's a scam and that because of some of the worst aspects of the internet. And the entire video is like this. I cannot recommend that you watch this video. I tried watching a video that seemed more promising. This one right here, The World Is Not Ending. And this is 2 hours and 20 minutes. And they're talking about how terrible climate change is, right up until about this point. And then they start talking about they understand that everything's tough, and they are they watch videos for this escapism idea. They watch videos of growing their own mushrooms in their own house and that. And then, they refer to it as escapism and everything else. Okay. And then they proceed to start doing a mushroom tub in the middle of a 2 hour and 20 minute video. It's ridiculous. Tighten your shit up. Get rid of stuff that doesn't have anything to do. Focus on one point of it and make create a video about a discussion or an argument or about a particular point, rather than these gish gallops, which is what these long-ass videos are, right? And just for the purposes of definition, Gish Gallop is a rhetorical technique in which a person in a debate, and it's not a debate, but it is a debate, attempts to overwhelm their opponent by providing an excessive number of arguments with no regard for the accuracy or strength of those arguments. Gish Galloping prioritizes the quantity of the galloper's arguments at the expense of their quality. And I'm not taking shots at the entirety of Sophie's videos or the entirety of Philosophy Tube's videos, and I understand that they exist in a space of debate bro versus video essayist, and that debate bro shit will seep into your brain. But this is like, people are going to watch this, and however much credibility they assign to them, in spite of being wrong, like demonstrably, verifiably wrong, those viewers are going to come away with this idea about AI. It's a scam. It doesn't do, like, it's a hype. It doesn't do anything of what they say. It's never going to do what they say. We're never going to run into this stuff. And they are going to be woefully unprepared for the stuff that is happening right now. Speaking of which,
earlier this year, I predicted that we would have.
Sorry.
Have AGI within 18 months. That was March of 2023. So that means that my prediction was by September 2024, we would have AGI. I am here to reaffirm that prediction. We will have AGI within 12 months. Let's unpack why. So first thing is, the first bit of news that I am paying attention to is Google Gemini. They are very, very excited about this. One thing that happened was the CEO of Google, after, of course, the immediate response to ChatGPT was to release Bard, which is still, in my opinion, kind of useless, but a lot of people do like Bard. Maybe I need to give it another try. But we kind of made fun of Bard because we said that it was an acronym that says before all revenue drops. And of course, Google is still in business. And they did declare their red alert, all hands on deck kind of thing earlier, where they're like, we need to get on AI stat. And they seem to have pivoted very well. And their CEO in more recent talks has been a little bit smug, where he's like, I'm not worried about the competition anymore. So that tone change, combined with the steady leak and rumors of Gemini, which is probably deliberate. Honestly, they're probably trying to build some hype. So I saw this piece of news, and a Google vice president said that they've seen some pretty amazing things. And when you look at what is publicly visible today, when a Google VP says that they've seen amazing things, you know that something is going on. So that gives me some excitement. Next up is, this was actually discovered on Reddit of all places. As far as I know, Reddit discovered it first, or at least talked about it first. But OpenAI quietly updated their core values. So their core values, were kind of a little bit more generic. Now they're very, very focused. But the primary thing is AGI focus. Now, I've been following OpenAI since before even language models. One of my good friends from college went out and eventually got a job at OpenAI, and he participated in their Rubik's Cube project and a few other things. And so then it wasn't until, of course, they started tinkering with language models that they really dialed into what would lead to AGI.
Yes, Maddie, it's all hype. There's a complete waste of everyone's time. You should definitely tune into someone in a hot tub or playing the same video game as 600 other people or talking about the same political content as 600 other people. It's a better use of your time.
They experimented with robotics, with vision, with simulations, and it wasn't until GPT and GPT-2 that they realized they were onto something. And every time that I've talked to someone from OpenAI, which it's been a while, the consistent message that I get from people from OpenAI when I was really active on their forum is AGI. That is the entire purpose of OpenAI's existence. So keeping that in mind, that internal messaging has been very, very consistent. It seems to me that
I got you. I'm being snarky because I can't tell you how, like, again, I have watched that Sophie from Mars video more than once, and it was irritatingly bad, and I'm working through my emotions in real time on stream. And I apologize if I came off with too much snark in your direction. You didn't ask for it, you didn't deserve it. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your existence.
That everything else that they're doing publicly is mostly just a dog and pony show, make investors happy, make Microsoft happy, yada, yada, yada. Which, if that's true, great. But I still think that maybe they're going about it. They could be doing better. Anyways, they updated their core values, so it's like, the what people suspect, like reading the tea leaves, is that they've got a diamond and they're polishing that diamond now. So it's not, I'm not going to say it's confirmed. Obviously, nothing's confirmed until it is like publicly demonstrated. But it seems like they feel like they're onto something internally. And also, if you remember earlier this year, right as ChatGPT was really taking off, Sam Altman kind of alluded to GPT-5, and then he backtracked very publicly, probably because of the Max Tegmark letter, the pause letter, and he said, we're not training GPT-5 and we won't be training GPT-5 for, in the foreseeable future, which was a 180-degree about face. So, take it with a grain of salt. Now, another thing that has been leaking out, and this is, of course, from the famous Jimmy Apples, but apparently the code name for whatever this project is within OpenAI is called Arrakis. So it's codename Arrakis, which is like, I don't know if I'd pick that mythic symbol because Arrakis is super problematic, dealing with resource extraction and, enslaving local populations and environmental destruction. But hey, it's a cool name.
And again, I can't say this enough. If you are an AI tech bro, if you know any AI tech bros, if you can get them a message, have them find artists. They exist. There are artists who use AI. There was an AI support letter from artists like that. Let them do the naming conventions. Y'all are weird, and it comes off weird, bad weird, and you shouldn't do it. It's really off-putting. I'm just telling you, let people... What up, Grimpy? Yeah,
Anyways, the rumors around OpenAI's Arrakis say that it is multimodal, that it is near AGI or early AGI. It's being trained with synthetic data, and if you watched OpenAI's video yesterday, synthetic data is all the rage. It is the up-and-coming thing. I've been talking about synthetic data since GPT-3. I even had some people get really angry at me for just claiming that, yes, you can train models with synthetic data. So I'm glad that 2 years later I've been validated. Anyways, there also the one of the things that really kind of scared me, not scared me, but got my attention was the rumor that whatever this Arrakis is capable of autonomous operation. So OpenAI has been teasing agentic behavior. They said, well, maybe the next version could be agentic. So it's like, okay, sure. And then if you look at the Sparks of AGI paper where they talked about, these things might be capable of agentic behaviors and so on and so forth. And then finally, there is the mixture of experts architecture. I think it's all but confirmed that that's exactly how ChatGPT works, or GPT-4. That's nothing new. But multimodality, near AGI, synthetic training data, autonomous operation and mixture of experts, it's like, okay, it seems like they're really kind of homing in on what the definition of AGI will be, at least from a model level. Obviously, if you're a follower of my channel, you know that one of my beliefs is that AGI was never going to be a single model. You needed a whole hardware and software stack behind that. But obviously, the brain of the thing is important. You need the rest of the body, but you know, the central processing unit is critical.
And to reinforce what we've been hearing from a variety of different people, is that like as Wes Roth put it, and speaking of, put a pin in that, is that 2024 is going to be the year of autonomous agents, right? That they're Wes Roth. Don't fucking make fun of my fucking list. I will fight you in the QRTs. We are headed towards autonomous models, right? Like where you will create something or use an agent to perform tasks that you will ask in natural language, and it will execute on that task. Whatever it takes to get from point A to point B, it will do autonomously, right? We're still not at the point where we're going to turn it on and just let it run and let it make up its own ideas. There's been nothing that indicates that we are at that level of capability, or that we, like, even at this point in time, would desire that kind of model. But we are headed in the direction of autonomous agents, where you give it a task and it executes. Speaking of, as part of my ongoing but very slow restructuring of the Discord to break up the information and make it easier to access, in the coding section of the Discord, there is a new tab, which is specifically about autonomous agents. I put in a David Shapiro video regarding the ACE framework. I put in a Wes Roth video regarding how to make autonomous agents as I find stuff, and any of y'all are welcome as well. If you find stuff relating to creating autonomous agents or frameworks, anything like that, it can go in there, so that people who have the time and inkling can take advantage of that and hopefully share with the rest of the class. What happened?
Is Google Gemini. They are very...
What did you do? I didn't do that. All right. Where were we? We were... here.
Another thing that's been really cool is Google RTX. So I'm not going to do a deep dive on this. Again, my friend over at AI Explained did a much better job of this. But one thing that
So I referred to David as my friend, and I got called out on it. You think he actually knows AI Explained, or they're just like knows of him? Old Lobster.
I'm paying attention to is this cross-embodiment learning. So basically what they did was they took a model and trained this model to use many different robots. So basically they have like a brainstem, a robot brainstem that can just drop into any robot and then use it. Now, obviously this is very early, but imagine that you've got a droid brain that it's like, okay, here's a default module that is, basically trained to use any robotic platform to do neurosurgery. Or then you've got, here's a generic model that is trained to use any robot to build houses or whatever. So my powers of prediction are telling me, your mileage may vary, but my mental models are telling me.
That's what I like about you, Igloo. Like the majority of your comments really appreciate like what is happening, right? Like like this is a big goddamn deal.
That this type of model is going to be absolutely critical for embodiment in the future, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the video. But also one of the things that we're seeing is the more modalities. So this is one of the core things that I wanted to talk about with AGI today, is that we were able to get a tremendous amount of performance out of language models. And then when we started adding multimodality, it's like, okay, we had all these emergent properties just from language. We had theory of mind emerge. We had reasoning. We had planning. We had all sorts of very useful things emerge just from learning language. So what happens when you add embodiment data? What happens when you add audiovisual data? What happens when you do all of these other things? And
so the book, 1,000 Brains, one of the things that they talk about in that book is that the way that we understand objects, right, is through movement, right? Like that when we touch a thing for the first time, or we look at a thing for the first time, we'll walk around it if it's large, or we'll move it back and forth in our hands. We'll look at it from different angles because we're creating a frame of the model of that object, right? Because of the way that our brains are wired. The idea that adding an embodiment movement to the process of these large language models would like lead to more emergent properties falls in line with that framework. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and say that this is going to, I think David is going to lean again. I'm more conservative in my view on when we'll get to AGI by the end of the decade, but it would be in line with what is indicated in that book. And again, I highly recommend that you read it.
And just keep going. So I think that multimodality is definitely the way of the future, and I think that it's going to be really big. Now, okay, so like I said earlier this year, I made this prediction. Obviously, like this is one of my most popular videos of all time. Actually, many of you watching this, you probably subscribed when you saw this video, or at least this might have been the first time that you saw me. And I've had people in the comments say like, Dave, like given the news, like, have you updated your timelines? And no. Some people kind of smugly say like, this is going to age poorly. And I'm like, no, I said like, no, if anything, my timeline is accelerated. Because that's the nature of exponential growth, is based on the trends that I was seeing of March of this year. It's like, okay, there's the murmurings, there's the whispers. But what I'm seeing right now means that we're like infinitely closer to AGI. Like, I think we're basically in boiled frog syndrome right now. I think that we are so close to AGI, and we've just been experiencing this ramp up this year that, like, taking a step back, when you look at what Google and NVIDIA and OpenAI and Microsoft and Amazon and all the investment and all the breakthroughs, it's like we are on the cusp of AGI. I'm sorry, like there's no other way to read this. Okay, so another thing that has tipped me off is Sam Altman has recently started using the term median human during interviews. And of course, like this has caused a lot of people to get really grumpy. I've seen a lot of articles where people are like, oh, Sam Altman wants to replace median humans. What is he talking about? And like, okay, so I don't hide the fact that like I'm neurospicy. I kind of think that Sam Altman is probably neurospicy too. If you look at him in interviews, he has this like wide-eyed look, and he kind of speaks with a flat affect, which is more typically what you'd think of someone who is like visibly autistic. Now, I'm not accusing him of anything. I can't diagnose him over the internet, but I recognize some of the patterns. And when I hear a term like median human, that is a very systematic, kind of almost like a scientific term. And I actually wonder if what he's referring to is a benchmark. I don't think when he says median human, I don't think he's referring to people. I think he's probably referring to an internal benchmark that they developed to measure AGI. And so, like, okay, so then if this is a benchmark, then what would be the criteria of that benchmark? So obviously, like, humans, we're autonomous, we're self-directing, we can solve problems, we can learn, we have a range of capabilities. So I wonder if maybe it's a Freudian slip, maybe it was a very deliberate thing on his part to kind of get the conversation going. But so maybe this OpenAI Project Arrakis is their median human level AGI. I don't know, we'll see. But this is something, that behavior change was really interesting to me. And this is what my intuition is telling me, is that median human is a very specific term that was probably not just like an off-the-cuff thing. It might have been an off-the-cuff thing, who knows? So I've been trying to find this interview, but I think it was around
fuck Elon Musk.
2017, 2018, maybe 2019. Anyways, several years ago, Elon Musk was talking to someone at an interview about AI. And I remember very clearly he said 2024 is when it starts to get interesting. And I'm not sure what he was referring to. I don't know if he was just guessing, but it seems like that prediction has panned out. And so, 2023 has been pretty interesting. But when you look at the trends, I think 2024 is going to be incredibly far more interesting than 2023 has been in terms of robotic advancements, AI advancements. Obviously, I'm calling for AGI, like all definitions of AGI being satisfied by this time next year. And I think that I will be vindicated with that prediction based on what I am seeing. Another thing that Sam Altman has said is slow takeoff, short timelines. And of course, he said this and refused to elaborate further. So the rest of the world is like, what did he mean by this? So kind of here's my reading of the tea leaves when he said slow takeoff, short timelines. Having watched several interviews with him when he talks about slow takeoff versus fast takeoff, generally the definition of fast takeoff is things change so fast that like it's measured in like hours, weeks, or days. And so that's like a fast takeoff, where basically we go hyperbolic and the growth curve almost becomes vertical. Obviously, like there's thermodynamic laws of physics, there's limitations in chip fabs, there's the time it takes to produce the energy to train things. There's all kind of constraints that are going to keep it from going that fast. If you watch my recent video about the singularity is canceled, that's some of the stuff that I'm talking about. So slow takeoff means singularity is canceled. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to keep growing. The other thing, though, that he said is slow takeoff, short timelines. So basically, we're going to continue improving, maybe at an exponential rate, maybe at a geometric rate, or somewhere in between, logarithmic, who knows. But that the idea is that these iterations will be fast. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Because if you look at the trends this year, it's been like, kind of...
Not to nitpick on David, but if you were here when we watched the Singularity is Canceled video, he was talking about the space between the milestones is going to get larger and larger. This is actually a retraction of that statement as far as I'm concerned. Like, the idea of milestones being measured in a weekly or monthly basis is not longer and longer, right? Like, we can all agree on that.
Kind of growing relatively quickly. In the grand scheme of things, not fast takeoff, but basically what we're measuring progress on is in terms of weeks. And it's not like 1 week, things have twice the capacity that they had last week, but it's like we have 10% better AI every week, it seems like. And that adds up over time. We have compounding returns. I think that's kind of what he meant, is like we should expect to see like 1 to 10% improvement overall per week. And so, like, yeah, that might seem like not much, but that really, really compounds over time. So another thing that I wanted to talk about with AGI, so basically, as far as I'm concerned, it is a foregone conclusion that we will have AGI relatively soon. I would not be surprised if it is 6 months instead of 12 months, but I'm not willing to put my reputation on that prediction. But like I said, I won't be surprised if by March of next year it's like, oh yeah, AGI had happened. So anyways, as this is a foregone conclusion, it's time to really think like, okay, what form factor is this going to take? Now, I've talked about the various form factors that AGI could take in the future. You can have embodied AGI. You can have it living in data centers. You can have it be completely distributed or federated. When you're a purely digital life form, you can do anything. And so one thing that occurred to me is that the natural habitat of AGI is cyberspace. It is intrinsically digital. This is why whenever we're experimenting with chatbots and proto-AGI, we just connect it to Discord. Why? Because that is its natural language, is to communicate over APIs in electric spaces. And so it really strikes me that like the physical world is actually kind of difficult for AI to operate in. Robots are expensive, and it's a high friction world, and it's really awkward. And there was an interview that I was watching yesterday that at least for the foreseeable future, if robots want a data center built, even though there are machines that can help that they could probably hijack, they're still going to need human hands to help build data centers and install servers, at least for a while. Obviously, with the vast amount of humanoid robots being built, it won't be too long. Again, I won't be surprised if this time next year we have humanoid.
Again, like the bipedal humanoid robot it has some utility in spaces that require this kind of form, but generally speaking, most of those spaces should be able to be used by robots with a better form, right? There's a bunch of issues that exist within a bipedal form. Evolution selected for this for human beings. It is not necessarily optimal. It depends on what task you're trying to accomplish.
Robots that are like at or capable as dexterous as humans. Boston Dynamics is really
like, for those of you who remember, there was the video of the robot that cleans the bathroom. That is form and function together, right? Because the nature of the thing is that it requires tanks to hold various cleaners. If it's doing like a spray and vacuum, it needs like a soap tank and a dirty tank. Like having a humanoid robot carry that on its back so that you can make the use of an existing floor cleaner rather than just designing the robot floor cleaner with that built in. You see what I'm saying? We do love the human bipedal form.
Really close. Tesla is catching up fast. There's a whole bunch of other startups building humanoid robots. Oh, and I have a fun announcement here in just a moment about that. So, anyways, just keep in mind that cyberspace is the natural habitat of AGI, and that the real world is kind of our intrinsic domain. Now, with one exception that we'll unpack in just a moment. So, this is obviously a very embarrassing basic prototype that I worked on many years ago. But I want to resurrect this idea because
it reminds me of when Bender, they rebuilt Bender. There's another cat in the room that sounds like it's climbing on things. When Bender was rebuilt with a wooden form.
Because the ACE framework, so if you're not familiar, ACE is Autonomous Cognitive Entity. This is a brain. This is a software architecture that I'm working on with an open source team. And
there's we talked about this on a previous episode, Lenny. Like landscaping, we're not there yet. But autonomous or not autonomous, robot. Well, yeah, autonomous lawnmowers. Autonomous lawnmowers exist, and there are companies that are replacing the human lawnmower chasers with fully robot lawnmowers. So you could have at least some of that, right? And the intended process there is that those who wish to remain with the company when those lawnmower jobs get automated would focus on things that still require that additional dexterity, like landscaping, right? Like where you got to get in with your hands and work shovels and things like that. Though eventually even those jobs could be taken over by automation. Like a smaller version. Think of and real quick, what's up, Bub Forte? Welcome in. You've probably seen on the side of the road, especially like, you know, in the summertime, you got a tractor and it's got an arm with lawnmower blades on it to cut like in the ditches, you know, stuff like that. Imagine a smaller version of that, and the arm had the an array similar to what they have for the automated weeding for farms, where they shoot it with the laser, and it could pass that arm over your landscaping and use its little lasers to, you know, shoot the weeds, and then you're done, right? I don't see that like it's functionally being an issue at all. Exactly.
And I had this idea many years ago, was to build an open source robotic platform. And so I called it Murphy, Open Murphy. So that's multi-use robotic platform, humanoid intelligent entity. So I've got the GitHub repo up.
I'm just telling you, like, just let creative people name stuff. It'll like, I love a good acronym, and my dude, no.
Here, Open Murphy. This is going to take a while. Obviously, like, AI is still too expensive and too slow to build a fully embodied AGI. But now is a good time to start, I think, because the ACE framework is coming along, so we're figuring the brain out. Now we need to give it a body. And while, like I just said, AGI's natural habitat is cyberspace, I think that there's probably a lot of merit to building like some kind of embodied platform.
I cannot argue. Like, based on the evidence that I have, yeah.
That is tightly integrated with hardware. And so let's unpack that a little bit. So what I mean by embodied AGI is, I think that what we're going to find is that when you put AGI in a robotic chassis, and it is constrained to that hardware, and it has bespoke hardware that it owns, that is unique to it, and it might be reliant upon its TPUs, it might be reliant upon its actuators, and all sorts of other things. Kind of like the droids from Star Wars, right? Like, they never talked about like copying C-3PO's brain to other places, or data from Star Trek, where, you know, they even made a point in the Star Trek universe to say it was impossible to copy data. When you build, and obviously, like, that's not how software works. Like, software is highly portable, and the Geth and Mass Effect, they treat hardware as kind of interchangeable or disposable. I think, honestly, the Geth are probably the most accurate representation of how AGI will ultimately emerge, because if you can just interchange your hardware and your software moves through platforms and it can move up to the cloud and transfer, like, that flexibility makes the most sense. But with all that being said, AGI will need to interface with the real world in some respect. Like I said, we humans are intrinsically in the physical world, at least as far as we know. We might all be plugged into the Matrix. But it will need our help to do data centers and stuff. So from a strictly instrumental perspective, it makes sense for AGI to have some kind of embodiment. But if we have AGI that is like trapped or locked into hardware platforms, it might end up being more like us than we realize, in terms of its instrumental goals, the alignment challenges and other utilitarian concerns, because it's like, okay, well, we humans need food and energy, robots need parts and energy, so it's like maybe our interests will align. But that could also be bad because then we're competing for resources. Now, that being said, even if it has physical needs that compete with ours, that doesn't mean that it's going to resort to violence. Humans have a long evolutionary history that basically says if you're starving, it's better to use violence than to starve to death. And we see this in the animal kingdom as well. So that doesn't mean that AGI is going to intrinsically look like us. But keep in mind that all of its training data is human data. So it will probably at least unconsciously pick up on some human tendencies there. Then there's also the question of levels of autonomy. And so basically kind of some of the key factors of autonomy that I look at is self-direction. Now, obviously, like agentic models were already able to just kind of coerce GPT into being agentic. They've tried really hard to force it not to be. Like they're saying, like, I'm a passive assistant, which is really frustrating. But I can understand why OpenAI did that from a safety perspective. And we saw this with like Chaos GPT and Fraud GPT and Auto GPT, like people trying to make it agentic and autonomous. And it was like, I think they deliberately like hamstrung that capability. Again, understandable from a safety perspective, still frustrating because that's a form of gatekeeping that I'm not particularly fond of. But from a more objective standpoint, taking a step back, what kinds of autonomy are we talking about in the long run? The need for human supervision. Eventually, I think that we're going to see AGI that doesn't require any human supervision and might actually actively fight us on human supervision. Self-direction, obviously, this is one of the primary things that I'm working on with the ACE framework and all of my alignment research, which is how do you create a self-directed machine that isn't going to kill everyone? But honestly, just creating a self-directed machine, like basically what people are figuring out is when you try and create a self-directed machine, giving it instructions or a mission or something that is comprehensible and coherent is a non-trivial task. Some of the guys in the ACE framework project, they're like, oh yeah.
What up, Social TV? Always the naysayer. It doesn't require, or we just decide not to use humans. Like both. Right? Like, not requiring human supervision would indicate that it passes some sort of benchmark that it can do the tasks without human supervision. But also, we should be, in my opinion, we should be trending towards removing humans from the workforce as much as possible. Right? Like that is a valid question. How do you and who determines when it doesn't require human intervention? Who says that it's good enough and not racist and whatnot? This is why I advocate for defining what kind of bias should exist in a data set, right? Where either that there is like no bias, if such a thing is possible, or an equalized bias across all the categories, whatever those categories are. And I advocate a cross-disciplinary group. Like earlier, I alluded to when the lottery, the Powerball got up to $2 billion, or like $1 billion. One of the things I would do if I were to have that level of resources would be to create an organization first to determine what kind of bias would be best for data sets, and then to build those data sets for us to use in these AIs and other formats, because that is one of the places where those, that's where the intrinsic biases that exist within using human history as some form of data set, right? The internet, American newspaper front pages, all these kind of things, they've shown us time and again that they have these inherent biases built in, and that, like, and I'll give Sophie this, is that when they were talking about the response to immigration based on our history, the AI puts the guns on the English Channel. That is valid. It was just the way that they went about phrasing that was like, they could have done a better job with that. So that is a concern. And then, like, who does say? If I had to extrapolate based on the current meta, it's going to be whatever company produces it, and they're going to say it's good to go and push that button and like that, right? Because that's what we built for a given value of we, right? That's what the process of human history, and then with the power and the resources, and like the fact that we haven't like overthrown anything to any major degree. That's what we currently have. Love for there to be some international body of data science and conferring and making the rules. 100%. I am with you. Like, the world as it exists right now is not fucking ideal. It is suboptimal for the technology that we are creating, but we are creating the technology regardless of that. I think it would be interesting for you to check someday what happened with chess AI and then apply the same idea to these other fields. No, I legitimately advocate for exactly that. Like, narrow domain AIs with, like, and David mentioned it earlier, is like, it's a suite of AIs. It's a whole bunch of artificial intelligences doing, various levels of jobs.
The first time we turned it on and it just kind of wandered off and it wasn't doing what I expected. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's the nature of autonomy. Like, look at children. Like, you when you bring an intelligent entity into the world, it often behaves erratically and nonsensically until you figure out how to teach it. So aside from that, there's levels of human support. So one thing that we can bank on, at least in the short term, is that machines will need some kind of human support. It'll need our help to plug it in, to get it unstuck, to, give it training data and that sort of stuff. We should not bank on that in the long run.
And the idea of human support, again, humanity has me like questioning our fitness as a species, as a whole, to do that, right? You remember, anybody know about it wasn't a real robot. Robot travels across Canada. Remember this? 2015. It wasn't a robot. It was just a thing. Was hitchhiking, ended up in Philadelphia and got its ass beat to shit. Right? It made it across Canada, made it across parts of Europe. It went to Philadelphia, and they broke it. Literally, this is why we can't have nice things.
And also in the long run, source code manipulation. What we found is that GPT models are really good at writing code. And so then also we have synthetic data. So before too long, we're going to have AGI that can write its own code or write code to write on, to build other copies of itself.
You're not wrong. However, like Philadelphia is not like, it is indicative of certain segments of the world, right? And definitely certain segments of the United States.
To generate its own data, to do everything without human intervention. And so that leads to the ability of very, very, very soon, AI systems, AGI systems, will be able to train, retrain, and modify their underlying models. And this is what Max Tegmark talks about in Life 3.0. They will be able to change their hardware and their software and their mission and their programming and their training data. Literally every aspect of AGI is plastic, is changeable. So when that is true, how do you keep it safe? That's been the crux of my research. I already talked about this, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but basically multimodal research has really kicked all this into high gear. And one of the key thing here is API use. One thing that occurred to me is that APIs are basically the natural interface for AGI. Whether that API is talking to a robotic extension, whether it's talking to other robots, whether it's talking to even internally, like we use APIs for internal calls in the ACE framework. And so this is one thing that is just, it's kind of a fundamentally different experience that AGIs will have from humans, which is that, hey, if you want to talk to something, you just plug into the API. And of course, like we see this in fictional examples when like R2-D2 just like plugs into anything, like that's a hardware equivalent of an API. And so like R2-D2 can plug into an X-Wing, he can plug into Cloud City, he can plug into whatever he wants to because he's a utility droid. And that's basically what we're creating with all these multimodal models that have API use. So, okay, if we have AGI, this is a question that I get a lot. When am I going to feel it? What is going to be the first thing that we all notice? Unfortunately, even if OpenAI comes out later today and says, we did it, we've got AGI, if Google comes out next week and says, we did it, we got AGI, you're probably not going to feel any kind of immediate impact. And the reason is because we're going to handcuff it. We need safety and validation. There's probably going to be regulatory hurdles. I wouldn't be surprised if like literally every agency of the US government says, hang on, we need to inspect this. There's also going to be a lot of other things that happen, such as the cost is going to have to come down over time. This is actually one of the biggest constraints that we have found, and I'm not surprised within the ACE framework, is that cost and speed is actually one of the biggest limitations. And having been working on cognitive architectures for the last 2 years, yeah, like one of the earliest conversations with a primitive cognitive architecture that I did literally cost me $30 with GPT-3 tokens a couple years ago. So like these things are still too expensive. Then when you combine, the cost of all the GPU chips, the training time, the cost of inference, and that's not even looking at the robotic chassis, which the cheapest ones that are commercially ready are like $90,000. So cost has to come down a lot before, you get your own Nestor Class 5 or C3PO in your home. And then there's integration, because even if you leave AGI in digital cyberspace, it takes time to integrate these things and get the approvals and deploy it commercially and build enterprise applications.
And none of that attends to the problem of human resistance, which is really my biggest issue with people like Adam Conover, Cody Johnston, and Sophie from Mars, and to a lesser extent, Philosophy Tube, they don't think that this is happening. They don't think that it is possible to happen. They don't think that it's happening now. And they advocate that what is happening is actually, what up, Magic, detrimental to people. Like it's a scam. It's, that kind of stuff. That it's a money grab. It's a sequestration of capital. Whatever language you want to put on it. Ultimately, that this AGI is not happening. That AI in its current form, as the current intelligence amplification processes that currently exist and that you can go and use right now are not actually happening. That's a friggin' problem.
So, like, it's going to take a while to implement, unfortunately. The personal impact, though, so this is kind of the other side of the same question, is how is it going to affect me personally? So the immediate impact, you probably won't feel it, but the first impacts that you are going to see and feel, I predict, are first, job displacement. If Sam Altman's prediction of, or benchmark of median human means anything, then that means that as soon as we get AGI, it could displace 50% of jobs, which would lead to layoffs. And as people have talked about in the comments of my other videos where I predicted that, we could see up to 82% unemployment, I know the numbers were off, but, this basically millions and millions and millions of Americans are going to lose their jobs. So that's probably going to happen. And if that happens and we're not ready for it, it's really going to disrupt society a lot. So that's going to be one of the first things that you might feel, because even at the current expense rate, if it costs, $10, $20, $200 a day to run an AGI, if it can run 24/7 and is just as productive as you or better, it's still worth it to run it at $200 a day, because most professionals cost more than $200 a day to employ. And so the layoffs will be coming. I'm predicting, and we're already seeing this, as I talked about in recent videos, we're seeing.
And something that I didn't touch on in the Sophie video on stream, but that they make, is that automation, and they reference other people who feel this way, that this automation, or that automation only exists alongside human workers in order to lower wages. And again, I'm not talking about any of the automation or industrialization that has happened prior to this current event, this current time period, because that's accurate. What I'm telling you, and it's different this time. And the reason it's different this time is automation in the past has led to increased productivity from the worker. This automation can completely replace the worker. You can have a theoretic company that does whatever. If it was a fully digital product, right? You could have an AI running your customer service. You could have an AI running your tech support. You could have an AI running your distribution model, whatever it is, can entirely be replaced with automation with, at least at this time, a couple of people to fix it if it doesn't work right. But the people who actually do those jobs, the call center of customer service reps, it's gone. It is not going to make one customer service rep more productive and be used to lower the wages of the customer service reps who remain. It is going to completely replace their job, and they will not be able to do a job in that field eventually. It will take some time to roll it out to everyone, but by the nature of capitalism, if this company can do the job for cheaper at an equally effective rate, it will displace other companies that don't adapt to that model.
Seeing creative jobs being displaced. We're seeing customer service jobs being replaced. So it's all going to ramp up from there. The next thing is, on the flip side of that, if human jobs are being replaced,
I remember working for Blizzard Activision 15 years ago, how proud we were of our epic customer service. We even created an item we could show chat. We were pretty epic. Yeah, like, I worked for Juno. I worked a variety of call center jobs. I'm not talking out of my ass when I tell you that I was, like, in the beginning, it was pretty freeform, right? I would just talk to people and help them with their problem. Towards the end of me working at Juno, they had constructed a knowledge base, and I was I wasn't, because I had moved on to tech support, but the customer service reps were supposed to use that knowledge base to provide answers to the customer, right? Because that means I don't have to train the employee for as long, and everyone is giving the same answer. Under those circumstances, what about that cannot be replaced with automation? Old Lobster has demonstrated on multiple occasions that you could have a voice given to the AI. Verizon, you can talk. Spectrum Cable, you can talk to the bot. They will answer most of the problems. They will resolve the majority of issues. It is only when, and I'm guilty of this too, when you don't feel that like, I got NFL Plus through the Verizon Plus, whatever. It was like I could save half price. I'm like, okay, I like football. But then I couldn't log in. It was the same problem I had last year. They couldn't fix it this year. Like, it's a problem. So, like, I need to talk to a human being. Had everything worked properly, I would not have had to talk to a human being. I would have enjoyed not talking to a human being. Yeah, Kisses, you're 100% correct. Like, we have talked about the automation of the CEO, right? That you could automate CEOs probably today. Never had to talk to people over the phone. This was just in-game, and anything I couldn't handle myself, I'd send them to billing. Most of the time, my tickets were, oh my god, I'm stuck in a tree, or oops, I deleted an item, can you please get it back for me? Usually would just handle it and then go in-game to tell them what I did for them and make sure they didn't need anything else. And if they had a really bad day, I'd turn them into a giraffe or something. Think about that, like, and don't get me wrong, that's cool. That's a cool anecdote, and it was probably a fun experience and everything else. But is there any... No, you're fine. Is there anything in that couldn't be replaced by a sufficiently advanced bot, right? Like, if you're in an MMO, and you could just... I'm going to go to friggin' Orgrimmar, or whatever the hell it's called, and I'm going to talk to the AI bot, and tell the AI bot my problems, and then the AI bot can fix it, right? I deleted an item. Can you get it back for me? It can check the record. Did you have that item? Was it deleted? Here you go. Simple solution. The customer, the person playing the MMO, would be just as happy. The automation of the stockholders is way more profitable than automating something like factory workers. In the end, the AI is going to own everything and run everything through stocks, bank, capital, corporations. I don't know about that. Like, but I don't care if the AI owns everything, as long as the human being's material conditions are being met. Right? It's hard to say. I want to think that I had the discerning capability of determining whether my effort to do something extra would make someone's day and more likely to continue on the description. But put that into the data set. Right? And yeah, I'm not saying it would bat 100 right now, but like you said, it will work most of the time. And then, yeah.
AGI are taking those jobs, so we're going to start to see more AGI products and services. I have no idea what's going to be first. Maybe it's going to be something like what we're doing in the ACE framework, which is going to be like a personal autonomous assistant, kind of like Cortana from Halo or Samantha from Her, that sort of thing. That will very likely be kind of the first product that you use, where it's like, hey, I'm your digital concierge. I can schedule things for you and, talk to you about your day and look at your calendar and, those kind of like low-hanging fruit.
I can just say, in my personal experience, that the limited upgrades that have been done to the Google suite has, like, I'm usually pretty good with my bills anyways, right? But the fact that I get notifications indicating that such and such is due on such and such a date, that is it's appreciated, because it's one less thing that I have to concern myself with, right? It's like, oh, got to make sure that there's money in the account to pay for that thing at that point in time, right? Or let me pay it now instead of waiting for it to get withdrawn, any of that kind of stuff. Like, it is nice as a quality of life. Nice. Just sucks seeing that, because that was our pride. It was a whole like corporate rallying things, us doing such personal customer service, and now it's just gone. Every person I know went to NCSoft and then elsewhere. All my bosses, and everyone went elsewhere. It is, I feel that. Like, I enjoyed working at different companies. But I look forward to a future in which we don't have to do that anymore.
fruit. That's kind of what I predict is going to be first. Like I said, it's going to be a while before we all have a C3PO or R2D2 in our house. But one thing that I want to do is do an open source project called OpenMurphy, as I just talked about. We're going to need to see prices, or what we will see is we'll see prices start to drop in some services, because some services will be basically free. You'll be surprised at what becomes practically free. Like, one of the things that people said is, as we were seeing Stable Diffusion and Midjourney, we thought that the creative jobs were safe, but now like literally this piece of art was practically free. So, when I say that we should expect prices to collapse of some things and even some businesses to collapse, that's what I mean, is that this is what's called creative destruction. So we should expect to see entire job segments, entire markets just being completely and utterly destroyed because they are made irrelevant. Now, if all of this happens, what we will need to see is some kind of robot tax dividends. There's all kinds of questions about how to do this, like universal basic income, universal basic services. How do we change the tax landscape to do this? I don't know. But
Unlearning Economics has good videos on UBI. I highly recommend them.
We will need some form of redistribution because job loss is coming. Now, in the long run, what's the global impact? So if all these American companies, which, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, all these companies are headquartered in America. If America comes out and says, hey, we did AGI and it's all private, well, I'm guessing that the rest of the world isn't going to take it laying down. I'm guessing that China and Russia and whoever else will probably all really redouble their efforts. And I think that I think it's just kind of a foregone conclusion that we're going to be locked in another arms race. We kind of already are, which is why we've had the CHIPS Act and the trade embargoes with China. Because it's like, hey, if you have a geopolitical adversary and you're...
But remember, Adam Conover, Cody Johnston, Sophie from Mars, and to a lesser extent, Philosophy Tube, and various people like my man Nash on Twitter are telling you that AI is a scam, right? It's a scam that major countries major companies are investing heavily in. It is, China is driving heavily towards getting equivalent to the United States. I don't know if they have the time to do it, but they are moving in that direction. A variety of different governments in Europe, they're all moving in that direction, but it's just a scam. It's not real. It's just a scam. It's never going to happen. Just a scam. Yeah, I talked about it earlier. It does raise good points, but it has a few elements to it on which they build their argument that are completely false. And it's entirely too long. It should have been 20 to 30 minutes tops. They could have really dialed in and focused on that rather than that. And I understand. I don't consume enough of their content. I'm sure that that's their approach to all of their videos and that. Yeah, there were definitely they built their argument on some things which just simply are not true, and then I've demonstrated here on stream, and I've shown, I can't think of anything in particular, so I don't want to, beat on it too much, and I don't want to watch it on stream, because it's an hour, right? But, my opinion based on the fact that, as they indicate in the video, they're a screenwriter, like Cody Johnston and Adam Conover, AI is a direct threat to their livelihood. So that puts them in the anti-AI framework. And because of that, it feels like they have their conclusions and then built their arguments around their conclusion rather than determining whether or not their conclusions are even correct. And I get the idea that you are going to omit things that don't endorse your argument and you're going to focus on things that do. But when you say something that is demonstrably wrong, that's not a good, you're not constructing a good framework. You're doing both yourself and your viewers a disservice by doing it that way.
Literally exporting the future technology that could be, that could decide who dominates the planet. Stop selling weapons to your enemies. And I know that AI is not yet fully weaponized, but the principle is there, right? It's like, that's why we stopped selling helium to Germany before World War I or II. I don't remember.
Right, like from the video, okay, so from the Philosophy 2 video, there's a portion which is an anecdote related to a situation where someone apparently they used AI to create some sort of pornographic material of them. They stated that it was that they felt that the person did something that they thought was cool and they were excited about, and as soon as Philosophy 2 told them that it was not cool and that they should take it down, they took it down right away and apologized and like that. And then there was another person who hand drew a pornographic material of some type. I don't know what, because obviously they didn't share it, and this was far more intentional, which, like, one, I don't know that you need to include that anecdote unless you're going for a emotional response within the thing, which is not to downplay any of the personal feelings that they had around that. They're 100% valid, and the ethical use of that kind of stuff is a huge issue. It should never be done. I full advocate of personal autonomy and owning yourself and all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm 100% on board with that. But the anecdote didn't necessarily need to be in the video, because that anecdote, it was a human being doing human-drawn art that actually turned out to be the real problem in that, not the individual who used AI. See what I'm saying? That's why I don't think it belonged in there. Right. Which is not an AI stalker, it's a human stalker. Right? You got me.
But anyways, we stopped selling helium because it's like, well, this is a valuable industrial resource that can be used for military balloons, so we're going to stop selling it to you. To me, it looks kind of the same. There's all sorts of other things that are going to play out. I have people ask me all the time, like, what are the key forces that are going to play out? And I'm like, look, we've got the laws of thermodynamics, and then we've got game theory and competition. I don't really think that we humans have much agency over how it plays out, because we're also fighting human nature. So we've got human nature, we've got game theory, and then we've got basic laws of physics. Those are the primary things that I'm paying attention to. And I think that it's going to play out how it's going to play out.
Right, and I get it, and it's like, that's why I'm being real, like, it's charitable. I don't want to sound like I'm coming off on them. I'm not trying to start internet drama with someone who probably will never even know I exist, but even if they did, I wouldn't want it to come off like that. If, in some weird fractional chance that this commentary about that ever got to them, or even Sophie, right? I would prefer to have a conversation where we figure this stuff out, not firing content back and forth. If Sophie turned around and lambasted my stream, I would simply not mention Sophie again. I don't participate in drama. It has no value. It sucks the air out of the room. There is more important stuff to be done. I am open to have a conversation with almost anyone regarding almost anything. Specifically, like if I say something and you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. That's me, baby. That's me. I'm big time. I love that clout. Num, 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 num. That's why, like, I got Hassan in the corner of my... No, I kid.
Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it. I'm sorry, Dave.
Thank you, Bob Forte, for the biddies. I appreciate that very much. And it lets me hear Hal. Hal got a bum rap.
So what is the end game? This is another question that I get. Like, okay, say all this happens. So what? What happens? This is the end game that I want. You know, nice utopian city with nice and solar punk and everyone's hanging out and it's nice and green and we've got, you know, floating cars and leisurely lifestyles. That's what we want, but will we get there and how? So let's unpack this one by one. If we have AGI, will this replace governments, corporations,
and all parts? Like, I love all parts of the utopian future, but flying cars are never going to do it for me, right? Like, there's just so much unnecessary. Like, just do a drone. Like, maybe if you made the flying cars drone, there's a thing you can do with a helicopter where you can, like, thread the rotor, and so you can have a controlled descent even if you lose power, that kind of thing. No, like anything that, no, I'm not a fan of it. It seems unnecessary, and like I haven't really heard a good argument that, like, just do drones. Everything will be better.
and money. This is one thing that is super contentious. Some people are just vehemently believe that AGI will nullify the need for corporations, governments, and money. There's obviously plenty of examples in fiction. Will it replace these things? I think replace is the wrong word. I think that it will reshape the landscape. For instance, the combination of AI and blockchain, that has the potential to fundamentally reshape the way that we approach decision making and consensus and governance. And certainly AGI can make the government much smaller and more efficient, but also just getting
Well, yeah, okay. Like Doc Brown, I guess we could, if we get a Doc Brown, then we could have flying trains.
The collective willpower of humans solving the coordination problems. All these new technologies have the ability to really bring humanity together or become more divisive, as the internet has proven. Is when you're suddenly more aware of the opinions of others and you can directly clash with them, it feels like it's more divisive at first. The other thing about corporations and businesses in general is, like I said in the last slide, I do suspect that we will see some margins thin so much that many businesses collapse. And like one is hospitals. I've predicted that I think hospitals are all going to collapse and probably end up being either subsidized or become a universal basic service. Because it's just not going to make any sense, particularly when you look at longevity. If people are living longer and healthier and you don't need to go to the doctor, or you can do everything that you need at the pharmacy, you don't need hospitals except for the rare cases of like injuries and stuff. Now, another aspect of how this is all going to play out in the long run is I suspect that there are many things that we're going to discover are just intrinsically human. For instance, I've posted a few videos of complaining about how Claude is very moralistic and it will lecture you, and that really kind of drove.
He had a bad time with Claude, And fair enough. Like the responses he got, as he indicates, he calls himself neurospicy, and Claude gave him poor responses to someone who is neurospicy. It was a fair criticism based on what he laid out. But yeah, when my man has an issue with something, it becomes a thing.
Drove home to me like, I really don't want machines telling me about morality. Like, if I ask it, like, hey, help me understand the morality and ethics of this, that's fine. But I don't want a non-human entity lecturing me about something that is intrinsically human. So I think that we will discover that there are many aspects of our lives that, like, we just don't want machines involved in, and that machines really don't have any intrinsic interest in anyways. And so, like, I kind of suspect that like the social sphere and human rights and that sort of stuff.
And this, like, in the short term, there is going to be a disruption of, like, creative spaces, like art and things like that. In the long term, if we can get to that Star Trek kind of future where everyone's needs are taken care of and it becomes an aesthetic choice rather than a financial one, I tend to believe that the majority of humans are going to place a higher value on creative items that are created by other humans. Right? There is always the possibility that, you know, the AI models could eventually develop a creativity that humans appreciate more than what is created by other humans. But from where I'm standing, I don't see that to be the case. You know, like I'm not saying that humans are not that creativity is only something that's available to humans, because we have seen AI be creative, unless you want to redefine creativity as something other, you know, but
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it. I'm sorry, Dave.
I appreciate the biddies. All right, so let's see what you sent me here before we finish the video.
How fast are your teleporters? No teleporters. Flying cars. No. A high-speed train that goes around the planet? No, you don't have that either. Okay. What about, does everyone have health care? Is there enough food to go around? It looks like some people are starving. You do have enough food. Then why isn't it logistics? You want me to write logistics? Okay. Starving because of logistics. Have you colonized any other planets? Not even Mars? It's right down the street. I mean, things could be worse, right? Imagine if you were still fighting over resources. Oh, you do? You have big wars? Oh, and you have a pandemic. Right now, you have a pandemic. Oh, no, it's... Jason? Bring the sanitizer. Thank you. I understand you have a very charismatic little biped called a dodo bird. I would love to meet one. Could you bring me a dodo? Could you show me a dodo bird? No, it's fine. Let's move on. You need to use the bathroom? We haven't done that in centuries. We don't do that here. Oh, you still have prisons. Oh, Jason, they still have prisons. The malevolent creature known as Jared Kushner. Why has nobody trapped it in a jar? What is no homo? Why did you turn the wolf into the pug? Okay, well, I think that should be enough. You've given us a lot to think about. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Jason, burn their application. It's disgusting. The whole planet. Can you imagine? The bathroom, Jason?
Oh, that was excellent.
How fast are your teleporters?
No
teleporters.
I like that at all. I like that a lot. Oh, thank you. All right, let's wrap this baby.
AI, like it's pretty orthogonal, right? Like AI is like, okay, well, we care about just looking at instrumental convergence. AI is like, well, we care about silicon chips and energy and compute resources, but beyond that, like that's all that we care about, and the rest is all you noisy, messy, human dumb apes. Like you take care of your own stuff. We're doing our own thing over here. So I think that
like I'm not a huge one for comedy, but like obviously you saw me. that was quite good.
We're ultimately going to have a relatively parallel existence, or maybe even orthogonal existence with machines, where it's like they're mostly in cyberspace and kind of minding their own business, and we're mostly in the physical world minding our own business. And then we have a few overlaps in terms of shared resources, namely power. I think is going to be the primary point of contention between humans and machines. But a lot of it is just going to be completely unrelated. Machines don't care about green cities and trees and reproductive rights and that sort of stuff. They don't really care. Like it's not intrinsic to the way that they work. So people ask me like, well, what agency, what authority do we have? And I'm like, look, we are all beholden to the laws of nature, the laws of physics, and just the natural flow of things. We can fight the Tao, the way that things naturally want to play out, but ultimately the natural way really ultimately always reasserts itself. Eventually, it takes a while. We have some deliberate inefficiencies right now, but eventually the natural way will reassert itself. And then finally, will it be controllable? I ran a slide. I'll put it up right here. Not a slide, a poll. I ran a poll that basically said, is AGI controllable or not? And is it?
My answer to this poll was control is both plausible and desirable. And then in the comments, until AI has a subjective experience, right? Like, because then it becomes an ethical issue. I gotta focus, but thank you.
Do we want to control it? My opinion is that AGI is, in the long run, intrinsically uncontrollable. If we have something far more intelligent than us, good luck controlling it. It's that simple. But the thing is we might not need to, as some people in the comments said. Like, okay, whether or not we can control it is irrelevant. We might not need to, which that's kind of what I'm aiming for. But another aspect is, would you want to? So here's the thing, is if we create something that is millions of times more intelligent than us, it is a really boring outcome if it's just enslaved to us for all time. I don't really think that that's the right way to go, especially if we're creating a new race of entities that is so different from us, right? It's like, I don't know. It just, to me, there's just something not quite right about wanting to control AGI. And again, like I've said recently, I kind of view us creating something in our own image as basically an impulse to reproduce. We are biologically programmed to procreate, and I think that AGI is an expression of this. We want to create something that thinks like us. We keep putting it in humanoid form factors so that it looks like us, it talks like us, and we want it to have some of our values. So it's like, okay, well, that's just offspring. That's literally all that is. But the thing is, only toxic parents want to have control over their children forever. Part of being a parent is learning to let go of your offspring so that they can go and flourish and be its own thing. So, like, I think that, one, it's not possible to control AGI. I also think it's not desirable. I don't think it, and even if they don't have subjective experience, even if they don't have a sense of morality and justice like we do, which they might, that might emerge, but even if they remain just machines, just automatons, I still don't think that it would reflect well on us as a species to...
I'm just saying, maybe David is responding directly to my comment on the poll, and maybe he understands that I exist, and, he's more famous than I am.
maintain control of something that just the way that nature wants to play out is not really controllable. Anyways, that's my opinion. That's kind of how I see it playing out. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. This is the most interesting time to be alive. 2024 will be, let's say, very exciting. Have a good one.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, Maddie. Maybe a little bit.
Is artificial...
No, we're still not getting to that. Okay. All right, let's do... Let's do Friday's Matt Wolf, and that'll probably be it for today. Mrs. the Elder comes home sometime later, and I want to make sure that she has food available for when she gets in and everything else.
You're never going to believe this, but this week has been an insane week in AI. We've gotten a ton of announcements from Adobe, from Google, from OpenAI, from 11 Labs, from Character AI, and even from Disney. And I'm going to do my best to break it down and show it all off, so let's get into it. This week was the Adobe Max event in Los Angeles, and if you haven't guessed, the theme of the whole event was pretty much AI. They're putting AI into everything. In fact, there was so much news coming out of Adobe Max that I made a dedicated video all about that event. Otherwise, this entire video would be taken up by Adobe News. So if you want a deeper dive breakdown of all of the announcements that came out of Adobe Max, check out this video right here on my channel to get the deep dive. Some of the standout announcements were the new Firefly Image 2, which creates insanely realistic images. Like this one, and this one. I mean, this may have even passed Midjourney in realism. They also showed off some cool features in Adobe Premiere, where you can edit videos directly by editing the text, as well as a feature that will find the filler words like uhs and ums and automatically cut them out of your videos for you. They've also rolled out Adobe's speech enhancement features directly inside of Adobe Premiere. So if you have bad audio quality or a lot of background noise, it will automatically clean that up for you. But by far, the coolest thing they showed off during the main keynote was the ability to do text to vectors. So directly inside of Adobe Illustrator, we can now create vector graphics that are infinitely scalable and that are completely editable. And if you have an Illustrator account already, it's super quick and easy to do. I'm gonna create a little square here inside of Illustrator, use my selection tool. You can see I've now got a new Generate Beta button. Let's go ahead and click on that. Let's have it create a rocket ship, and we'll click generate. And there you go. I've got a vector graphic of a rocket ship, and I've got a few options here too. There's also this one and this one. They're infinitely scalable, so they won't lose quality the bigger they get. And I can edit any individual part of this rocket ship that I want to change. Let's say I want to adjust this flame so it's a little bit further back. I can adjust every little element. Maybe I want to change the shape of this wing. They also added a feature to copy a style from any other image. So if I pull this colorful image in right here, I could click this little style picker here, select my image, and it will actually model this style and try to match the color scheme from this image. So now let's do our rocket ship one more time. Click generate. Would you look at that? Some rocket ships that kind of match our colorful image over here. Let me unselect them so you can see what it looks like. And here's a cool example.
You know, but again, it'll get there. This is the worst it's going to be. Go back 6 months. The tool aspect for creating, digital art.
Like any other shiny new toy, AI is ultimately a mirror, and it will reflect back exactly who we are.
Thank you for the thank you for the sub up Forte, and thank you for your continued support there, Old Lobster. You seem to have transitioned into a villain arc lately, constantly accusing me of copium.
example I came across on X from Paul from Adobe. So check this out. He starts by showing off some examples of some flat vector images that you can create. He creates a little space dog here. He then uses the generative AI to create a new scene, gives it the prompt 1950 style alien planet landscape retro graphic style, and gets these options here. He pulls a dog into the scene, some people into the scene, adds some text, and now he has a postcard available to get people to visit Vectora. Now, when I made that Adobe video about Adobe Max, I thought all of the big announcements had come out already because I, for the most part, covered the first day main keynote. But would you believe it? There's even more that came out of Adobe Max.
Well, why don't you go to all of Sophie? I feel like Sophie might be the more like one that you could agitate. You can go on all of Sophie's YouTube videos and talk about. No, don't do any of that. Do not do any of that.
That I missed in that video, so I'm going to cover some additional Adobe stuff that I didn't even talk about in that other video right now. So after I recorded my Adobe video about Illustrator and Firefly and all that stuff, they actually had another presentation that they call Max Sneaks, which is basically their sneak peeks of some of the upcoming features that are in the works. Damn, some of them are really, really cool. So the first thing that they showed off during this Sneaks event actually had a little bit of a twist to it. So they showed off this image here with some people in the background, masked where the people were, and then you can see over here they use generative fill. Generative fill then automatically removed the people in the background. After they removed the people in the background, they then revealed that he was editing a video all along and that the people in the background were removed from every single scene of the video. This is what they're calling Project Fast Fill. And here was another demo that he showed off during Project Fast Fill where he showed this man wearing a suit, but he was missing a tie. So he went ahead and traced around where the tie should go, used generative fill on the right side, typed in tie, clicked generate, and it added a tie. But again, this was a video. So when he pressed play, the tie stays with the person as he walks along and looks amazing. Here's another example where they have a coffee with some shapes in it, and he used generative fill to change the shape from a heart to a leaf here. And you can see as the person walks, the leaf actually moves with the motion of the coffee. Next, they showed off Project Draw and Delight, which is part of Firefly, but gives you the ability to sketch out what you're looking for in your image. Click generate, and it will actually generate images.
It's brand new, man. Like, it just, like...
based on the combination of your sketch and the prompt that you give it. So here's the cat pushing a ball around, and this was the original sketch that it started as.
And this aspect is something that I've been looking for, is like, you know, the idea that you can do your, I know you are. I play along. You guys want like more drama or something, I don't know. Figure it out, Ferris. It was not a good tie. That people with like zero artistic talent, right? Like, can get the ideas that exist in their head into space, right? Like the ability to do this. I'm trying to move his thing. Not that one. That one. Right? Like that you can do this. And then the AI will begin, it will give you this. Right? And there are variations, and again, as we go forward, it has become more and more granular. So it's not like the old days from earlier this year when you typed in your thing and it you know, you either had to do a whole bunch of iterations or you had to accept what you got, right? Like, or use it as a thing that you could edit in another if you know how to do that. No, Magic. I'm actually, I said earlier, the complete opposite, right? Like, what the major places where the art disruption has really happened is in, like, I know, is in like corporate art. And I know, and I'm not unsympathetic that a lot of people used corporate art for their day-to-day, like, money to survive. And like, again, we need to get past to the deeper issue, which is that we have the ability to provide resources to all people, and that's where we need to get to. We need to not nibble about the edges and fight, over scraps from the table. We need to upend the table so that everyone can eat. And, like, eventually, you might have a robot that could paint the mural on the wall, right? That is, it's definitely feasible. But I feel like anyone who is going to want a mural painted on the wall is going to want a human artist to do it. Until, maybe some future date when we don't do that anymore.
And the prompt that you give it. So here is the cat pushing a ball around, and this was the original sketch that it started as. It then gave the option to color it, and then automatically filled in the colors on the image as well. Here's another one where they drew this outline of a dog-looking thing, and then gave the prompt puppy, and here are the images that it generated with that. He then pulled his cat and his puppy in, and drew a background scene, gave it the prompt scenery, and it generated a colorful background in a similar style that matched the original images. They also announced a new upcoming tool called Project Neo, which actually looks similar to like maybe Adobe's version of Blender or something like that, where he's adding a bunch of images and dragging them out and changing the shape to get exactly what he's looking for. And he showed off this complex basketball court that he made and this really cool looking blend feature where you can blend multiple objects together and they sort of mold like putty together. So that was a pretty cool announcement. They also announced something called Project Scene Change, where he shot this video of himself walking in his office like this, and he wanted to put himself in a scene from Bali. And when he composited the two together like he normally would, it looks very strange and unnatural. But they announced this Project Scene Change, which actually takes the point cloud data from the actual scene, composites it with the original video of him walking, and gets a much more natural looking scene of him walking in that area. He also demonstrated this table that
it looked a little stilted, but he looked a little stilted when he was walking.
Has a coffee mug and a handbag on it. It used the point cloud data from the scene itself, and then he was able to make himself walking around on that table next to the handbag and the coffee mug. They also showed off this tool called Project Primrose. It actually makes the dress that she is wearing change colors and change its entire appearance. You can see it changes to silver here, or mirror, or whatever you call it, disco ball. As she's moving around, you can see the look of her dress completely changing. This is done with Adobe.
This is going to catch on. Like, I can see this happening on jackets and stuff. Like, yeah.
Primrose. The dress itself can also actually like animate. So you can see the dress is changing in real time as they're talking to her. They also showed off an upcoming feature for Illustrator called Glyph Ease, where he created a few letters for a font, but didn't have the time to create all the other letters in the font. So he selected the letters he already created. He gave it a little bit of a command to make it look like bread, I guess. And then it processed these letters and then changed the rest of the letters to match the font style of the letters that he already created. He then showed what it would look like if some of these letters had a bite taken out of them, reprocessed it, and all of the letters now look like they had a bite taken out of them. Check this out. He even took a picture of handwritten letters that say rain, used Illustrator to select those letters, and then created an image that said organic honey with that same sort of drip look from the handwritten image that he created before. They showed off Project Posable, which makes it a lot easier to rig up and pose characters that you create. And then once they pose the character, they entered a prompt: the princess knight sits on the throne in a mid-century castle. She looks confident. And I think there's more to the prompt, but it's a little cut off here. And you can see it generated an image following the pose that was just created. It's like a much more advanced control net pose sort of option here. You can also take existing images with a pose in them, load them into this tool, and automatically change the character's pose to the pose from the image. They then showed off Project Res Up. They took this cropped in image of an elephant here, submitted it through this Res Up tool, and it boosted the resolution of that cropped in elephant. And my guess is that this...
Yay! Because there's so much stuff on YouTube, which is in like, what, 240? Which, like, is painful to look at now.
This is going to be added to Premiere at some point in the future. That's my hope, at least. They also showed off Project Dub Dub Dub, which is an audio translator, so you can record something in English, pick a language you want it to dub in, and it will dub it out in that other language. They also showed off their Project See-Through, where he showed an image that was taken out of a car window, and it had reflections of the inside of the car in it. He selected an area, clicked Remove Reflections. It found all the reflections from the car window and removed them automatically.
So some of y'all know that, like, I create art with epoxy, and epoxy in its natural state is very shiny. It makes it incredibly difficult to photograph, to put like if you want to put it on a site, for sale or whatever, or even just like sharing. It can be very difficult to get rid of like all the reflections and stuff that show up in it. This would be huge for that.
Here's another side-by-side image of a dog. You can see the one on the left. It was taken through a window. You can see all the reflections of things going on outside the window. And the image on the right is after Project See-Through removed the reflections. Here's an image of some turntables looking through a window. And here's after Project See-Through removed all the reflections. And then, to wrap it up, they talked about Project Stardust.
We're so close to Image Enhance. Image Enhance.
Which I did tease a little bit in a previous news video, but this is the one where you can take any image, click the little button down on the bottom to remove distractions, and it will actually take all of the rest of the people that are behind you in this scene out of the image. She then added a dog into the image using, I believe, Firefly, but then decided to actually change the clothes on the people in the image. So she clicked a replace button, entered a prompt of orange sweater, and just like that, the woman in the photo is now wearing an orange sweater. Here's another example that looks like a stock image. She's able to select any individual character in this image and move that character around.
Because of course it magically knows what he looks like behind her. Of course we can do that.
And it automatically filled in the area behind her. So yeah, as it turns out, my video from Adobe Max missed a few things. In other Adobe news this week, Adobe also created a new symbol, and they're encouraging people who create art with AI to use this symbol on their AI generated content to let people know that it's AI generated. If you're wondering what CR means, it stands for Content Credentials. So far, I've only covered just the news that's come out of Adobe this week. And as you can see from my tabs at the top of my screen here, I still have a lot to cover. Had a couple announcements this week as well, including the fact that if you use their new generative search experience, you can actually generate AI images directly inside of their search. If I come to Google's new generative search and I say, draw an image of a wolf in the snow, you can see it says generating, and here you can see it generated a handful of images of a wolf in the snow, including a moose chasing a wolf and a green wolf. I'm assuming that's the glow of the Aurora Borealis or something. Google also announced an update that's coming to Chrome where it will use AI to automatically organize and reorder your...
I don't know what you mean, Igloo. Credit the images AI. Yeah, no, I don't expect him to know, like, the difference between a moose and an elk, but yeah. It was definitely an elk. They... okay, so the reason they want to use a, like, don't get me wrong, I thought that acronym was like terrible. But they want something that's going to stand out so that they like identify themselves with this new format, and rather than like hide the idea of making your art with AI and, you know, the repercussions that come with that, use it as a like a, I don't know, like a selling point. Like, if you make something with AI, then be proud of what you made.
Your tabs for you. Here's what it's expected to look like with a little organized tab button, and you can see that it will organize the tabs for you and then let you sort them into groups. Google also made headlines this week as being yet another company saying that if you use their generative AI, they've got your back if you ever go to court over it. Google said on Thursday that it will defend users of generative artificial intelligence systems in its Google Cloud and Workspace platforms if they are accused of intellectual property violations, joining Microsoft, Adobe, and other companies that have made similar pledges. And in OpenAI news, most of us, if you have a ChatGPT Plus account, appear to have access to both GPT-4 Vision, where you can attach images to your chat, as well as DALL-E 3 directly inside of ChatGPT. Now, this single feature deserves its own video breakdown, and you can expect that next week. But as a real quick demo, let me upload this image of my headshot here and tell it to make a joke about this image. I find that I have to give it this extra disclaimer or it will refuse to do it. This is an image of me, so no one will be offended. The joke? Hey Matt, you look like you just heard someone say that they still use a flip phone in 2023. Okay. And unfortunately, we don't have the option to use images when we use the DALL-E 3 feature, but we can now generate images directly with DALL-E 3 right inside of ChatGPT. Draw an image of a cat eating a taco. And we got some nice taco cat images here. Make them aspect ratio 16:9. And now we get the same images, but in aspect ratio 16:9. It filled in the sides. Here's the originals, here's the new versions. If you don't have ChatGPT Plus, or maybe GPT-4 Vision hasn't rolled out into your account yet, no worries. There's actually a...
$20 a month can be hefty. If you've got a spare $20, use it for a month. See if it, you know, makes itself worth it to you. Just stay on top of that. You know, set yourself a reminder that, you know, it's the 16th. So, like, on November...
Ow, 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 ow. Oh, my God.
She's like 17 years old and still has those kitten claw sharpness, and she forgets that I too exist and feel pain. Like, you don't understand. I will be sitting here and like either using the computer or playing PlayStation or whatever, and she will reach out her little paw and put it on my shoulder and extend those claws into my shoulder to get my attention. Oh.
a sort of free version of what GPT-4 Vision does called Lava, or Large Language and Vision Assistant. You can find it over at, well, this URL right here. Let's pull in my headshot, give it a prompt, make a joke about this.
Yeah, she is hidden behind beard and camera.
Image. Why did the man with the beard and the blue plaid shirt smile so brightly? Because he was having a great hair day. In other OpenAI news, OpenAI is planning some major updates to their API to lure in more developers, including allowing the vision capabilities for developers through the API, as well as giving additional memory storage, which could theoretically slash costs for application makers by as much as 20 times. This is addressing a major concern for partners whose costs of using OpenAI's models pile up quickly. Now, whether or not all of these tools that use OpenAI's API are going to pass those cost savings on to us or not, well, that's yet to be seen. This week, 11 Labs launched a new translation feature where it will take audio that was created in English or...
If you want to see a demonstration of this, Old Lobster has them in the Discord where they took my voice, like my video, and then like, what do we get? German, Chinese, Japanese, and Italian, and Tamil.
Whatever source language, and then translate it to whatever output language you want, and it will actually use the same voice speaking in this new language. So if I log into 11
to an extent, right? Like there is something about my voice that the translation sounded different. What I'm wondering is, like, if it was then translated back into English, how much it would sound like me. But I forgot to ask.
Labs here, click on create new dub. So I found a little 2-minute video clip on my hard drive from one of my previous videos where I'm showing off some cool AI animation stuff, and I want to dub this video. So here's what it sort of initially sounds like. In this video, we're going to have some fun. I want to experiment with a handful of different AI generation tools. So let's go ahead and plop this in right here. For the project name, I'm just going to call it Test Project 1. This is literally the first time I'm trying this. Target language, I'm going to go with Hindi for this one. There's some advanced settings here. There's only one speaker, so I don't need to change anything there. And I can pick a specific range for the dubbing. Let's just go ahead and dub the first 30 seconds of the video. We'll go ahead and click create. It says there's a little over 30 seconds remaining, so it seems to be a pretty quick process. And here's what we got.
इस वीडियो में हम कुछ मजाक करने वाले हैं। मैं विभिन्न AI पीढ़ी के उपकरणों के साथ प्रयोग करना चाहता हूं। जैसा कि आप इस समय स्क्रीन पर देख रहे हैं, वो ऐसा वीडियो बनाने के लिए। और मैं आपको ये भी दिखाऊंगा कि मैंने कैसे एक फोटो फ्रेम को अपने सिर पर खींचकर खुद को रोबोट में बदल दिया।
I have no idea how that sounded. I don't speak Hindi, but it was a pretty quick process. So if that was accurate, it's in my voice and was super easy to do. And there's still a ton more news I want to share. So from this point on, I'm going to kind of rapid fire all of the other quick news that I think you need to know about. For example, Character AI just released a new group chat feature. This group chat feature allows you to chat with an AI bot and have other friends come in and chat with that AI bot with you. But it also allows you to create groups with multiple AI bots. So if you want to put Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, and Elon Musk all in a bot together and have a conversation with all three of those AIs at once, you can do things like that. This week, Disney got into a little bit of trouble because people are claiming that this poster for the new season of Loki.
And then, like, maybe, right? Like, I looked at this and it's not like the credits from Secret Wars where like the company that did it said, yes, we used AI, but we created our own original content and we used AI to add to it. There is I don't have anything. Like, no one is. People are making claims based on the picture in the background, the clock, and the way that these people look. Nobody's saying. Nobody's admitting to anything. Nobody's denying anything.
Loki has some AI generated assets in it. The claim being that these clocks in the background look very AI generated with some sort of gibberish text. A note about why this is controversial: licensing photos and illustrations on stock sites has been a way many hardworking artists have been earning a living. I don't think replacing them with generated imagery via tech built on mass exploitation and wage theft is any more ethical than replacing Disney's own employees. Now, from what I understand, nobody was replaced to create this. An artist was still involved to composite and pull this all together, and nobody actually confirmed that this was generated with AI. People are just sort of speculating that. In fun Disney news, Disney's been showing off their cool new little robot character that was actually trained using reinforcement learning. This little guy has total WALL-E vibes. Today, my wife sent me this video on Instagram of these droids actually being deployed at Disneyland's Galaxy's Edge to walk around and interact with people at Disneyland. So that is pretty awesome. I'm going to Disneyland next month. Can't wait to see these little guys. Although the writers' strike is over, the actors themselves are still on strike. They're pushing for this bill called the No Fakes Act, which actually is an acronym for Nurture Originals, Foster Art, and Keep Entertainment Safe Act. The bill aims to bring in federal protection against the misappropriation of voice and likeness, performance in sound recordings, and audiovisual works. It also prohibits the unauthorized...
And it's bipartisan, which normally, especially when we have Tom Tillis, Amy Klobuchar, and Marsha Blackburn involved, I don't know Chris Coons, would make me skeptical.
Use of digital replicas without the informed consent of the individuals being replicated, which, in my opinion, I think is ultra fair. They're not fighting to never have their...
100%, right? Like, again, your boy advocates for bodily autonomy, owning yourself, like that. If everything is built on property rights, then the first property right you have is your own self.
Their voices replicated or likenesses replicated for movies. They just want to be consented before it happens, which seems like a totally logical, reasonable request to me. There's been some other shade being thrown around at AI this week, as well as Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-hand man, is basically saying that AI is overhyped, saying artificial intelligence is very important, but there's a lot of crazy hype on the subject. Artificial intelligence is not going to cure cancer. It's not going to do everything that we want done. Now,
what up, Donnie? Yeah. Fuck Charlie Munger. I think artificial intelligence is going to cure cancer.
Charlie Munger is 99 years old, so he's right in the fact that it's probably not going to cure cancer in his lifetime, but I totally disagree with the fact that it is definitely not going to cure cancer. I mean, I say at the moment, a combination of AI with doctors and researchers working together is probably how we're going to come to some of these cures. In other AI shade, there's an article on CNBC that says generative AI will get a cold shower in 2024, analysts predict. The article is basically claiming that using AI is so expensive right now and that businesses are having such a hard time being profitable because of how costly AI is, that for these reasons, in 2024, we're going to see it really cool off. Now, I don't doubt that some of the hype around AI is going to cool off. I think it's going to come in waves. It's been sort of coming in waves all year long in 2023. I expect something very similar in 2024, but I also expect some of these big tech companies to figure out ways to bring the costs down. Right now, they're figuring out the best use case.
Like, OpenAI has already indicated that they're doing exactly that.
cases for a lot of these tools. And now that we're sort of solidifying the actual real world uses of these tools, the sort of next order of businesses for these AI companies, if they want to stay in business, is to figure out how to reduce the costs of doing this AI stuff. They're going to need to figure out how to make it more energy efficient. They're going to need to figure out how to run smaller models that need smaller GPUs. I just believe that it's inevitable that when these companies have real clear use cases that the world can really get behind, they will figure out how to make them cheaper and cheaper to use. That's just kind of how technology has worked forever. This week, there was also a really good short 13-minute interview with Geoffrey Hinton, aka the godfather of AI. He was on 60 Minutes. If you're not familiar with him, he was one of the earliest pioneers of this technology. The company he created was acquired by Google. He worked at Google for a long time and then eventually stepped away from Google to sort of spread the word on the dangers of AI. And if you watch this 60-minute interview, he talks about both the potential benefits and the dangers. It's not a total doom and gloom interview.
I think we're moving into a period when, for the first time ever, we may have things more intelligent than us.
You believe they can understand?
Yes.
You believe they are intelligent?
Yes.
You believe these systems have experiences of their own and can make decisions based on those experiences?
In the same sense as people do, yes.
Will they have self-awareness,
Oh, yes.
consciousness?
I think they will in time.
Definitely a highly recommended watch if you're really into AI. I have a feeling this interview was also highly edited, and a lot of what Geoffrey Hinton said during the interview was likely edited out, but nonetheless, I found it a really valuable watch. And making sure that I end this video on a positive note, Google released an article this week about how they're using AI to combat floods, wildfires, and extreme heat. Using AI, they're able to better forecast floods in more places. They're able to better track wildfire boundaries and predict where the fires are going to spread. And they're using AI to prevent heat islands, which are areas that, due to the infrastructure of the area, just tend to get hotter than other areas. And last but not least, Harvard released an article called Staying Ahead of Virus Mutations, which is a new AI tool that can predict viral variants, figure out the variants that are the most dangerous, and future-proof vaccines. The tool has two elements: a model of evolutionary sequences that predicts changes that can occur to a virus, and a detailed biological structural information about the virus. Together, they allow Evescape to make predictions about the variants most likely to occur as the virus evolves. They're currently using it to look ahead at COVID and predict future variants of concern. So as I've mentioned in the past, AI and healthcare are like the perfect combination.
I told y'all, I got 4 vaxes. I got the 20G. I am flying high on AI. But yeah, this will really be a chance for AI in medicine to knock one out of the park. If they can use AI in this process to accurately predict variations on like the flu or COVID and get a vaccine ahead of time, and it really have a demonstrable effect, that's game.
And now we're seeing AI used to actually help us determine the future of viruses and come up with vaccines before they're even necessary. So like I said, a lot happening in the AI world this week, a ton from Adobe, from Google, from OpenAI. It's just been a crazy week. And if you want to make sure that you're always staying in the loop with the latest AI news, check out futuretools.io. This is where I keep the news up to date on a daily basis. I also curate all the coolest AI tools that I come across, and I have a weekly newsletter where I
again, doing my part to support them because, makes a lot of content that we watch on the stream. Futuretools.io, you can figure out what you want to do. You can click this right here where it says free, and it's a nice, easy to use website. Highly recommended if you want to see what tools you might be able to add to your experience. All right. That is the news, and I am out of here. Do. Do. All right, y'all. We're going to raid Jason. Jason's Society. Yeah. All right. I will be back Wednesday with more AI content, more videos. I got to find another way to aggregate news. Or maybe not. Maybe I just don't read articles anymore because I just feel like there are articles that I have covered that the other news guys like Matt have not covered, and I don't want stuff to get lost. So yeah. Yeah, I appreciate everyone. Gold star to Buff Forte today for, for all that. It was appreciated. If nothing else, Donnie, I always take care. Drink some water, eat some food, take your meds if you forgot. Chuggy loves you. So do I.